Chapter 541 Competitive Saya. Seeing the complicated expression on Naruto's face, Yuriko bowed slightly and said softly, "I am sorry Naruto, I may have troubled you just now, please don't worry about it." Naruto shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Aunt Yuriko, I also lost my temper just now, please don't mind." Yeah, Yuriko couldn't help but recall Naruto's fiery eyes looking at her just now, and the feeling of the hard thing under her pressing against her. Yuhi's dizziness flashed on her face, and she didn't know why. A touch of loss. Did she really have any other thoughts in her mind? Perhaps, this is only she knows. "Naruto, Saya will be handed over to you. You must help me take care of her. Let her stay with you tonight. Smile." When Shay heard the words, Yuhi's face turned pale, and he looked at his mother and said angrily, "Mom, didn't you say take it slow? Why is it so sudden? I'm not ready yet." Naruto couldn't help sweating a bit. He always felt that Yuriko was selling her daughter, and it was still the kind of hard stuff. This was really a little anxious. He smiled and said, "Aunt Yuriko, this is a bit sudden." "This is nothing. Back then, Saya's father and I only knew each other for a day and got married. Saya, you should have my demeanor, right? Arms." "What?" Saya let out a soft cry. Her plump body leaned against Naruto's chest at once, smelling the strong masculine breath on him. Her heart suddenly thumped. She turned her head and stared at Yuriko. "Mom, how are you?" Quote. All right, Saya, just get in touch with Naruto. I'll leave first. I won't disturb you two young people." Yuriko waved her hand, and with a giggling smile, she exited the door. Going out the door, Yuriko couldn't help but reach out and pat her bulging chest. The two meat mountains trembled slightly, and a heart was beating fiercely. Only she herself knew that she had almost lost herself just now. Naruto was by his side. If it wasn't for the words he finally said woke him up, I'm afraid he would have really fallen into it. Fortunately, at the critical moment, his reason finally prevailed, and he called his daughter in. Thinking of this, she couldn't help taking a deep breath and walked to her room, but a hint of disappointment flashed on her face inadvertently, as if she didn't even notice it. In the room, after Yuriko left, Naruto let go of Saya. Saya sat at the small table in the room with a slightly Yuhi face, pouring tea constantly, but he didn't dare to look at Naruto at all. "Mom has made it so clear. Do you really want to marry Naruto? Do you really want to be his woman? But what should I do now? Hey, what a mess." Shay's heart was ups and downs. She always considered herself a genius at school, and was used to being arrogant, but since she started following Naruto and got along with him along the way, everything about Naruto gave her an incomparable feeling. It feels like his strength, his wisdom, and his ability to deal with danger are incomparable to his own genius. Compared with him, his so-called genius seemed to be just a joke in front of him. This made her feel a sense of inferiority, or she could not help feeling ashamed. Seeing her drinking tea, Naruto also saw that she was obviously unprepared and a little nervous, so he couldn't help but say, "Shay, I think you should go back later." However, as soon as Naruto's voice fell, Saya stood up suddenly and said angrily, "Naruto, what are you doing so boring? Do you think I'm bad?" Don't get me wrong, I didn't mean that, I just thought it wouldn't be suitable for you to live with me tonight." Naruto shook his head and explained, "Although your mother said that, but there is no need to force you to stay, this kind of thing really can't be rushed." Shay was silent for a while after hearing the words, suddenly raised his head to look at him, and said firmly, "It's okay, I can stay, I will never be worse than my mother." Looking at her resolute and stubborn face, trying to prove her appearance, Naruto couldn't help but feel amused. No matter how you look at it, it looks like she is angry. "Okay, I know what to do next. Naruto, don't underestimate me." Saya stood up again, came to Naruto's bedside, and took off his jacket. Under the white and tender skin, it exudes a delicate luster under the light, and the pair of supersized meat mountains under the pure white hood on the chest is about to burst the underwear, hanging there heavily, trembling slightly. After taking off her shirt, Saya shyly covered her two huge mountains of flesh with her hands, but how could she hide the stalwart breasts with her delicate little hands? On the contrary, under the cover and squeezing of both hands, the place is more prominent, soft and bulging, and very elastic, which makes people want to squeeze a few times. Naruto was shocked when he saw that she was so direct and impulsive, and looked at her helplessly. However, he still felt a little surprised in his heart. Saya's figure was no worse than her mother's, and there was even a faint sign of her chest surpassing Yuriko's. You must know that she is still developing. After Shay finished taking off her clothes, she stretched out her hand to pull the skirt around her waist. After removing the skirt, her green short skirt slid from her smooth and tender thighs, and the bottom of her trousers was still white. In front of Naruto, his eyes lit up. At this point, Saya clearly wanted to devote himself. Looking at the shy expression on her face, Naruto definitely had a different flavor. At this moment, he could no longer suppress the ashes that had been hooked up by several women and Yuriko before. Naruto couldn't find an excuse to reject a beautiful woman who came to his door. Naruto, I will definitely do better than your other women. Shay shook the two delicate ponytails on his head, snorted, and lay down on Naruto's bed, reaching out towards Naruto's bed. Naruto ticked. If you don't believe me, come and try it. Chapter 542 Just like H Comics. Of eating guago like this, Naruto immediately became interested. Saya looks too tsundere like this. Naruto didn't want to stay with her so suddenly, but when he saw the, I'm the best, expression on her face, he couldn't help but want to conquer her well and let her know who is the most powerful. Although the idea of Naruto is also a little childish, but now I can't care so much. Naruto smiled slightly. Saya, are you really ready? I don't want you to do this because you were bewitched by your mother. HMPH, I'm not. Don't think of me as a jerk, I'm no longer a child. I know my choice very well. Naruto, what are you doing with a big man? Is it really true? Do you dislike me? Shay snorted in dissatisfaction. Naruto didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although Saya kept saying that he was very mature, no matter what, he still sounded very capricious and immature. He had some doubts. Did Saya really like him? Or was it purely because of Yuriko's words? However, it was too late for him to think. Seeing that Naruto was late, Saya couldn't help getting up and grabbed his big hand directly, took him to the bed, and pulled him hard, and Naruto's body fell on the bed. He propped up the bedboard and looked down at Shay lying under him, feeling her breath that became extremely rapid at this moment, and the aroma that came out of her mouth. He couldn't help saying, Shay, you know what, you look like this. I really want people to conquer you. Yeah, really. Being so close to Naruto, Saya felt flustered and confused. His heart was beating wildly, and the great courage he had mustered up, under the gaze of his blue eyes, suddenly disappeared. She didn't know where she went, and when she heard his words, she couldn't help but panic and said, if you want to conquer me, just try. Anyway, I won't lose to others. Naruto couldn't help laughing, looking at Yuhi's cute look with her face slightly raised and her eyes dodging in panic. She couldn't help but lowered her head and pouted her soft cherry lips. Shay's entire body was shocked, and he closed his eyes nervously, and his body trembled slightly. Naruto kissed her lips quietly, savoring the fragrance between her lips and teeth, feeling her nervousness, and couldn't help laughing secretly. No matter how bold and strong she was on the outside, she was actually a shy little girl at heart. Saya was dazed by Naruto's kiss, and suddenly felt a little soul fluttering. This was her first kiss. The first time felt really amazing. She didn't know how to react at all. She said that she was very powerful before, but now her performance is very bad. Naruto suddenly had the urge to tease her. He smiled away from her lips, and said softly, Shay, do you know what you need to do if you want to do better than others? Saya, whose face was full of Yuhi, came back to her senses, and couldn't help but be taken aback when she heard the words. Hey, you can't stand still like this. Really? Then, what should I do? Saya suddenly became anxious when he heard Naruto's dissatisfaction, and a pair of small hands grabbed Naruto's arm and asked. "It's very simple, just try to make me comfortable." Naruto laughed wickedly. "You don't even know this, do you?" Is it like those in the comics?" Saya shouted in disbelief. "If that's the case, I can do it too." "Naruto, just wait, I will never complain to you," the others conceded. After saying that, Saya got up angrily and pushed Naruto onto the bed. Yuhi gave him a tender look before reaching out and gently peeling off his clothes, revealing the strong muscles in Naruto's chest. Naruto laughed inwardly, and sure enough, Saya is really easily irritated. Hearing that she even read comics, I felt a little surprised. At this time, I saw her lying down and opened her own clothes, not knowing what she was going to do. He was looking forward to it. I saw Saya peeled off his clothes, and then put his legs on Naruto's body, then lowered his head slightly, opened his small mouth, stretched out the pink lilac, and suddenly licked Naruto's chest. The wet and slippery tongue slid back and forth on Naruto's chest, and then stimulated Naruto's tits from time to time. The ticklish and comfortable feeling almost made Naruto moan. In the line of sight, seeing her lying on top of him, pouting her white and tender buttocks high, and licking him little by little, Naruto suddenly felt unbearable. How is it? Am I good?" She licked for a while, and finally raised her head, her pretty face flushed with Yuhi, panting slightly and asking. She was wearing glasses, and the beautiful eyes behind the lenses constantly flashing attractive water light. "Very good." Naruto's voice was a little hoarse, his voice had already been rising. Down here." Saya frowned slightly, looked down, and was startled when she saw the high bulging place in Naruto, but of course she also knew that men liked it very much. The girl helped him with oral sex, but it was the first time she did such a thing, and she was a little reluctant. However, in order not to let Naruto look down on himself and say that he is poor, Saya still worked hard to gather up his courage and slowly came to Naruto's crotch, her beautiful eyes flickering slightly and staring at the bulging part of Naruto. Seeing that there was still a slight pulsation, I couldn't help feeling a little shy. "What's wrong?" Saya, seeing that she was just staring at him, but she didn't see any movement. Naruto, who couldn't wait, couldn't help but reminded aloud, "I'm already very uncomfortable." I'm sorry, Naruto, I will definitely satisfy you," Saya shouted anxiously when he heard this. Her pair of jade hands trembled slightly and pulled Naruto's trousers open. When Naruto's thing popped out with a whimper, the hideous face immediately scared Saya. Well, it's big." She covered her mouth in fright, her face shocked and ashamed. Immediately, her jade face became clear to Yuhi. She glanced at Naruto in embarrassment, and said softly, Naruto. Is this something? It's a bit big." Chapter 543 Subject to Attributes. "Hey." Naruto smiled secretly. Saya's expression filled his heart with a sense of accomplishment, and he couldn't help urging, "Saya, hurry up, otherwise I'm not satisfied at all." When Shay heard this, he gave him a stern look. "Got it." Then, trembling her jade hand cautiously, she gently held Naruto's place, and when she held it, the scalding temperature had already rhythmically made her feel embarrassed. "It's so big. Is this what men do? It's really ugly. However, why do you feel an uncontrollable warmth in your body? Do you really want to do like in those comics? Too horny, slutty. However, if you don't do this, Naruto will definitely look down on himself." "Do my best." She bit Silver Kiba slightly, and suddenly closed her beautiful eyes, quietly lowered her head, and leaned up. A special smell came to her nostrils, and Saya frowned slightly. She swore that she had never smelled the smell of a man, and she couldn't tell what it was. Then, she carefully stretched out her lilac and tentatively touched Naruto. Licked like a kitten. Naruto let out a groan, and then jumped suddenly, and slammed into Saya's face. "What?" Shay snorted softly and hurriedly retracted his head like a frightened kitten. Immediately, she felt that her reaction was too exaggerated, smiled embarrassedly, continued to lean down, opened her cherry mouth, and stretched out the soft and slippery lilac towards Naruto. Naruto couldn't stand being teased by her. When she opened her mouth and licked again, her waist suddenly slumped upwards, and the whole stick entered her small mouth. Shay's beautiful eyes widened involuntarily. The swollen foreign body sensation in her mouth made her feel uncomfortable for a while, as if her mouth was about to burst, and it was too big to put it all down. There was already a section in the throat. Okay, it's so uncomfortable. Saya whimpered. Naruto withdrew after hearing this, and Saya breathed a sigh of relief, sitting on the spot and panting slightly. Naruto, I'm okay. Saya gasped for a while, then saw Naruto's helpless expression lying there. He couldn't help but panic. After saying a word, he hurriedly lowered his head and hugged him. Naruto smiled slightly, holding her head with both hands. While playing with her two pink ponytails, he moved his body slightly, in and out of Saya's mouth. It's really comfortable. Naruto couldn't help but feel amused when he watched Saya endure the awkwardness and discomfort while serving himself without admitting defeat. After a while, when Saya's mouth was going numb, Naruto finally showed signs of ejaculation. He couldn't help but speed up and moved extremely fast in Saya's mouth. Well, so intense. Finally, in a round of extremely fast movements, Naruto sprayed out the bathing flames that he had endured for a long time, and all of them immediately sprayed all over Saya's charming face full of Yuhi's dizziness. Fortunately, Saya was still wearing short-sighted glasses, and the liquid only shot on her face and lenses, and did not stain her eyes. But the strong smell still made Saya frown involuntarily. She was shot all over her face, and looked at Naruto slightly aggrieved. Who has always looked like a suinder, when did she show such an expression? Seeing this, Naruto couldn't help but be very moved, and he immediately regained the fighting spirit after shooting, and still stood there rigidly. At this time, Shay also had a strange feeling in her heart. She had never been treated like this since she was a child. The men around her were all devoted to her like the stars and the moon. At this time, being treated like this by Naruto, there was a strong strange feeling in my heart, and I was a little obsessed with this feeling. Impressive. How domineering. Really like. Saya's face was dizzy and Yuhi was dazed, even Yuhi's ears penetrated. Naruto, do you still want it? She couldn't help raising her pretty face full of white liquid, and whispered to Naruto. Her tone was a request rather than a question. Her eyes were full of intoxicated brilliance. Haha, of course. How can this be enough? Then I'll work hard. Saya suddenly turned around, pointed her plump snow-white buttocks at Naruto, swayed slightly, and the small white panties were tightly outlined after showing off her two charming buttocks. She looked back and smiled at Naruto. However, I'm feeling so uncomfortable right now. Naruto, can you make me comfortable? Naruto was immediately excited by the excitement. After laughing, he sat up and stretched out his hand to support her buttocks. The place where he started was smooth and delicate, so he couldn't help pinching it. The trousers fell off. So shy. Saya pouted her buttocks, feeling the coldness there, and as Naruto watched closely, her delicate body suddenly softened. Naruto smiled, seeing that she was all wet, and every drop of liquid dripped down his thighs onto the bed. He couldn't bear it any longer, and approached behind her, straightened his body slightly, and gently entered it. Saya immediately felt the feeling of fullness and the pain of being slowly stretched below. She bit Silver Kiba tightly, propped up the bed with both hands, and tightly grasped the sheet with all 5 fingers. Suddenly, Naruto slammed forward, and all entered with a puff. Saya raised her head sharply, her 2 pink ponytails shook violently, the pain of being torn apart suddenly, and the fullness of being filled in an instant, 2 completely different feelings intertwined, making her immediately. My mind fell into a brief blank, and I almost forgot to breathe. After a while, Saya came back to his senses and took a few long breaths before finally getting used to the size of Naruto. Naruto, your place is too big. She couldn't help but turn her head and said coquettishly. Naruto ignored her, seeing that she was able to speak, and knowing that she had adapted to it temporarily, her body moved fiercely again. Oh, don't. The sudden push and thrust brought her a strong feeling, and Saya couldn't help raising his head and groaning. Chapter 544 Loose Power. Hearing her cry no, but the expression on her face was full of contentment and comfort, Naruto couldn't help but grin. Really not. He pulled it out. Suddenly, a feeling of emptiness hit Saya's heart. She swayed her buttocks with all her might. Her pouted mouth was so high, she said in dissatisfaction, "Why is this? Naruto, you bullied me. Hey, you said no to yourself just now." Naruto reached out and patted her snow-white buttocks, with a crisp sound, and there was a palm print of Yuhi. The numb and painful feeling immediately made Saya unable to help but make a coquettish moan, then turned around and whimpered and cried, "Naruto, why are you so bad?" Looking at her eyes with a moist luster, her eyes were full of charming, Naruto couldn't bear it any longer, and entered her body fiercely. Snapped. Naruto's abdomen suddenly pressed against her two flapped buttocks, making a crisp and tender impact, and the feeling of the whole stick entering her body made Saya unbearably let out a long wave. The feeling of being filled again almost made her rise to the clouds. Clap clap. Then, the two people on the bed started a round of fragrant and exciting battles. A few stabs, Saya couldn't take it anymore and reached the orgasm. She lay on the bed weakly all of a sudden, her high buttocks were still close to Naruto, and bursts of smooth belly came out. Twitching. Naruto felt the tightness and squirming inside her, and really wanted to insert it a few more times, but seeing how unbearable she was, he stopped moving and just let her enjoy that enter the wonderland of the cloud. After a while, Saya came back to her senses. At this time, her pretty face was half pressed against the sheet, covered with Yuhi tide, and she was breathing slightly. Okay, it's amazing. Saya tried her best to prop up her body. She was so exhausted that she wanted to get out of Naruto's body and let him exit from there, but Naruto saw that she had recovered. Almost there, but I was still hard, and I immediately started to exercise vigorously. Ah no, don't. The strong stimulation came again. Saya's hands were soft again, the whole upper body was leaning on the bed weakly, the two bulging peaks on the chest were completely squeezed and changed shape. Although he had cum-shotted her once before, he was still not satisfied, and when he was doing Saya, he didn't forget what he was going to do. Practice. Shay is a great girl. Female, there is a lot of negative energy in the body. When Naruto was cultivating at this time, he only felt a huge negative energy gathered in his body and combined with his own energy to regenerate that brand new energy, and this energy directly increased his chakra by 1/3. If he absorbs the energy of a few more virgins, he believes that he will soon have the chakra of a Kage-level powerhouse. While absorbing Saya's feminine energy, Naruto's movement speed became faster and faster, and an unparalleled sense of pleasure overwhelmed Saya, almost making her lose her mind. The joint of the two, the blood of the child has already been drained, and now the tender juice is all over it, constantly flowing onto the sheets. Saya swayed her hips crazily, catering to Naruto's attack, and her body was shaking violently. The glasses on her face had already been scattered to the side, and a high-pitched squeak was also coming out of her mouth. Sounds in the room. After a while, Naruto stopped exercising. At this time, Saya's voice was hoarse. When Naruto was pulled out of her body, Saya fell on the bed weakly, and was made to die. Her delicate body twitched slightly, enjoying the bursts of pleasure under the afterglow of the high tide. Really, I'm really going to die. She panted weakly, her beautiful eyes staring at Naruto fiercely. But she felt extremely fulfilled and satisfied in her heart. The feeling of being madly fucked by Naruto just now made her body feel extremely happy. At the same time, her heart was also full of joy. It seems that being like this is almost a bit doing it abusively can make her feel even more. Saya, you're amazing. Naruto smiled and gently wiped the liquid from her face for her. When Shay heard the words, the originally pouting mouth slowly flattened, and a happy and contented expression appeared on his face. But they didn't know that Yuriko in the other room was lying on the bed unable to sleep, and her mind was full of the scene of leaning on Naruto before, and the strange feeling of Naruto's majestic guy clinging to her. Thinking of this, her slender and round thighs could not help but close slightly. An itchy feeling came from between her legs, and the wet, slippery and sticky liquid kept pouring out. The white and tender jade hand couldn't help but put it between his legs, got into his black underwear, and moved quietly. Early the next morning, Naruto, who had slept with Saya all night, woke up early. He looked very refreshed and smiled at the girl who was still sleeping beside him. I have another girl who must be protected. We must end this broken world as soon as possible. He sat up gently, stretched his waist, got up and put on his clothes, took a shower, and sat cross-legged in the room to start practicing. After some practice last night, the chakra in his body has reached a level close to Kage level, but it is still a long way from Kage level. However, under the special energy in his body, he found that the huge chakra that was frozen in his body also seemed to have a feeling of being ready to move. To drive the original power, however, although the original power is a little loose, it has not been successfully driven. Naruto frowned slightly. It seems that the current amount of chakra is not enough. If this new energy is enough, can the original power be released? In this way, what will happen to the chakra in the body? He didn't know, but he was looking forward to that moment. Chapter 545 Experts Arrive. Naruto, the virus expert team is here. Just when Naruto was about to go to see other parts of the military area, Yako suddenly came over. After a night's rest, Yazi looks in good spirits now, dressed in a decent suit, with the Murata treasured sword slung around her waist, and her long purple shawl hair is soft and shiny. Hearing Yazi's words, Naruto couldn't help but feel a shock. The virus expert team, this is the talent he really wants to find. Yesterday, he had already arranged for personnel from the military region to look for it, but he did not expect to arrive here the next day. Sister Yazi, take me there, Naruto said in surprise. Yako nodded, and walked out with Naruto. They just came here by helicopter, and they are still in the military area square. Yako said as she walked. She asked intentionally or unintentionally, Naruto, I saw Saya entering your room last night, today I've never seen her. Naruto was stunned for a moment after hearing this, but when he turned his head, he saw Yazi's expression of interest, and there seemed to be a hint of teasing at the corners of his mouth. He hurriedly said with a dry smile, ah ha ha, isn't it? Yazi gave him a slight glance. After a while, the two came to the square, and Naruto saw a few men in white coats receiving a few people from a distance. He quickened his pace and rushed over. Master Commander. Several of the subordinates who were talking to the experts saw Naruto and immediately stood up and saluted Naruto. Naruto waved his hand. The experts seemed to have passed middle age, and several of them had bald heads. When they turned their heads, they saw a young man with blonde hair coming. Everyone saluted him and said hello. I didn't expect the commander of the military region here to be so young. Incredible. After introducing themselves, they also hurriedly bowed to Naruto and saluted. Master Commander, we are members of the Virus Expert Research Team, what instructions do you have? Naruto nodded slightly, and immediately sent them to the scientific research room prepared in the military district, where several infected dead bodies had been captured long ago. Next, the two brought the members of the expert group to the scientific research room of the military region. In the huge scientific research room, the roar of the struggling dead bodies could be heard faintly. They were locked in cages, and the whole big iron cage was shaken violently by them. Then you'll have to work hard. If you have any results, you can report to me at any time. Naruto said to them, and then sent a few gunmen to help take care of it. With the expert team studying the virus, Naruto only needs to wait for a result for the time being. Of course, the result may not be so easy to get, but this is still a method. If the power of technology is really impossible for all these reasons, Naruto must consider the future path. He can't keep the girls he likes in such a broken world all the time. If he can, he must take them to the world of Hokage. At least there, he is the shadow of a village, the god of the ninja world. When Naruto returned to her room, Saya was already awake. She was still lying on the bed lazily not wanting to get up, and when Naruto came back, she shyly pulled the quilt up and pulled her perfect body cover. Naruto, Naruto, Saya face Yuhi called him. Although the madness last night has passed, but at this time, thinking about it still makes her feel ashamed. How's your rest? Naruto smiled and asked. Well, I'm fine. Listening to his gentle tone, Saya was drunk, slightly lowered his head and said with a happy face. After the two had been cuddling for a while, Saya got out of bed, because Naruto had already used medical ninjutsu to nourish Yuhi's swollen area below her, so Saya walked no different at this time. After Saya left, Naruto sat in the room and concentrated on practicing, while experiencing the flow of the new chakra, while observing the original motionless power, looking for the connection between the two. Although everyone is in the military region now, it is very safe for the time being, but this is not a long-term place. In the military region surrounded by zombies, the internal productivity cannot keep up with people's needs. Therefore, while looking for a way to crack the dead body virus, Naruto must also release all his strength as soon as possible. Maybe he can open up the channel between the two worlds, and use the time-space ninjutsu to go to the world of Hokage. While thinking about it, Naruto's consciousness suddenly moved, and his eyes became a blur. The scene of the blue sky Shirakumo. This is consciousness space. Naruto was stunned for a moment, and it was the cheap Mother Chanela who came in by herself. In front of the line of sight, Kunai was watching him quietly. Naruto stepped forward and smiled slightly. Why are you bored again? Humph. You guy, if I don't pull you in, you won't come to see me in your life. Kunai exclaimed angrily. Do you know how boring I am here alone? Sorry. Naruto hurriedly apologized and said, because there's been a lot of things lately. Many farts. You bastards are spending your time on women. Of course you don't have time to accompany me. You bastard. When Kunai heard this, she immediately scolded regardless of her image, and her pretty face rose slightly. Yuhi looks extra cute. Naruto couldn't help sweating wildly, knowing that Kina used to be known as Blood Yuhi Pepper. You can imagine how fiery she is. But her gentle and sensual side is also very touching. Seeing Naruto's shriveled appearance, Kina couldn't help laughing again. Okay, I won't criticize you anymore, you're an adult too. I can't take care of me as a mother now. As she spoke, she held Naruto's big hand, and the two sat down on the grass, China's jade face slightly Yuhi, and asked, Naruto, your child is getting worse and worse, yesterday. So treating other girls, I can't stand it. Have you seen it? Naruto was embarrassed. I'm in your body, and now with your chakra loosening, I can already see the outside world. You kid, don't do bad things in the future. Take care of the mother in your body. Kunai said distressed-edly. You can't just watch it. Naruto murmured. Chapter 546 Makoto Ito. I'm very bored here. When I'm bored, I'll look at the outside world. Kina said in a sullen voice, with a hint of cuteness in her tone. Next time you have to pay attention to me. Otherwise, see how I deal with you. Humph. She raised her fist in front of Naruto again, threatening. Naruto was helpless for a moment, and he had to perfunctorily agree to her. Kunai just gave up, thinking that this guy was liked by so many girls, and felt very proud. Naruto is now even better than his father. After the two chatted for a while, Naruto withdrew from the consciousness space and woke up. He couldn't help worrying secretly. This cheap mother has been staying in his body, and now he can see the outside world, and she has to look at him when he does things. Just separate her. While Naruto was cultivating silently, Mommy, Yanyi and the others were forming a team to hang out in the military area. Because there were no dead bodies in the military area, there was no major danger. It seemed that they finally had the taste of the original world, so they felt relaxed. Next, I called everyone to walk around the military area together. However, the military area is heavily guarded, and of course the girls can't walk around casually, but with Shizuka's friend Nan Lixiang leading the way, there is no obstruction along the way. Nan Rika is a senior police officer. Since Naruto became the commander, she has been promoted to a senior officer, and she is also a senior general in the military region. With her, the girls can stroll around freely. The main body of the military region is mainly divided into two parts. One part is for the soldiers and officers with combat capability to live, and the other part is the space specially vacated by the military region for the survivors to survive. In the past 2 days, because Naruto has become the commander, the number of survivors received has greatly increased. When these survivors stay in the military region, they must have food to provide them, otherwise they will starve to death, but now the supplies in the military region are already very tight. Nan Lixiang explained, with a hint of worry in his tone. The girls frowned slightly when they heard this. But they all know that if Naruto makes such a decision, there will be a solution. So far, Naruto has not done anything he is not sure about. Suddenly, a black-haired boy came to the side. He seemed to have just come in from outside. He was looking around at the military area, and there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, Yanyi, Sakai, Otome, and Shanna all covered their mouths and exclaimed, "Ito Makoto." The black-haired boy turned his eyes, and immediately saw Yanyi and the others, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, and then he smiled in surprise. "I didn't expect to meet you here. You are not dead yet." Quote, "Ito Makoto, you're not dead." The world frowned slightly, although she said that she was very surprised to meet an old acquaintance, but Makoto Ito's image in her mind was completely ruined. The last time he was in prison, he almost went to prison. "I forgot that such a person exists, but I didn't expect that this time, he came out alive." Ha ha ha, you didn't expect it. In this suddenly catastrophic world, I can still live to see you. He suddenly laughed arrogantly, and the expression on his face was no longer the cowardice of the past. Instead, there was a strange look on his face. Kind of arrogant and powerful. Seeing Makoto Ito, who has transformed so much, Yanyi and others couldn't help but stunned. "Where is Taisuke Ziyang, who is with you?" Shanna stood up and asked lightly. This guy has long since died." Makoto Ito smiled, and there was no sadness on his face because of the death of his friend. Seeing Makoto Ito like this, everyone was shocked in their doubts. Unbeknownst to Yako Mami and others, also expressed strangeness to Makoto Ito's appearance. Fortunately, it didn't take long for this atmosphere to be broken by Ito Makoto's words. He just heard him laughing and said, "Since you guys can come here smoothly, Uzumaki Naruto shouldn't be dead, right?" The girls couldn't help frowning when they heard his tone. "Hey, that's right, I'm looking for him everywhere. Let him come here," Makoto Ito shouted arrogantly. "Bold, you can call the name of the commander directly." There were several soldiers guarding next to him. Hearing this, he immediately pulled out the gun on his body and pointed at him angrily. Nan Lixiang also took out the pistol and loaded the bullet. Two talkative guys. Makoto Ito suddenly lowered his head and chuckled. The next moment, before the girls could see how he moved, the two soldiers had already screamed and flew backwards. Boom! Just as the two fell to the ground, Nan Rika finally fired at Makoto Ito. The bullet hit Makoto Ito's chest in an instant, and Makoto Ito's body shook slightly and took a step back. However, at the next moment, he raised his head again, grinned at the stunned girls, opened his arms and laughed. "How is it? Is Lao Su powerful?" The bullet in the skin and flesh was taken out, the wound quickly recovered, and the bullet was thrown out with a wave. Nan Lixiang was shocked, and all the girls were also shocked. "I didn't understand why this guy suddenly became like this. Even bullets can't hurt him. Another monster." Nan Rika bit Kiba, took a step back vigilantly, and aimed the pistol at the opponent's head. At this moment, no one thought that apart from a strong man like Naruto, even Makoto Ito suddenly became so powerful. This is simply unbelievable. What the hell happened to him? Why did it mutate like this after coming out of prison? What exactly is going on? However, the next thing has not allowed the women to think more. Makoto Ito walked towards Yanyi and the others with a proud face. Tisk tisk tisk, what a touching reunion. Yanyi, I always miss you. How is it? Put yourself in my arms. In this dangerous world, I will give you strong protection. With the power of my body. Makoto Ito laughed and suddenly said that he stretched out his fist and slammed it on the ground. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound, and there was a tremor on the ground. I saw that with him as the center, the ground within 3 meters around it was all cracked into cobweb-like cracks, and the ground was slightly sunken. What power is this? The pupils of the girls couldn't help but shrank, and the girl quickly pulled out her long knife and stopped in front of the girls, with a solemn expression, "Everyone, be careful, this guy is very dangerous. I'll hold him back, you go and inform Naruto." Quote. Chapter 547 Body Fixation. Hey hey hey. Makoto Ito let out a low laugh. A disdainful smile appeared on his face when he saw Yako pulling out his sword. Suddenly, his figure suddenly flashed, and in the next instant, he rushed in front of Yazi at a speed that no one could react to. Yuko's pupils shrank suddenly, and just as she reacted, the treasured sword in her hand was tightly grasped by Makoto Ito's big hands. She hurriedly struggled, but found that the treasured saber didn't move at all, and kicked him in the chest with a slam, and hit him with a bang. The force of the shock made him lose his footing and staggered, while Makoto Ito was standing still, as steady as Mount High. What a powerful force! Yazi couldn't help but gasped, and the next moment she quickly let go of the treasured saber and stepped back. Humph! It's beyond your own power. Makoto Ito sneered. Full of murderous intent, he threw the Murata treasured sword in his hand at the place where Yako was. Swish! The long knife was like an arrow from the string, and it reached the chest of Yazi in an instant. Yazi, senpai, the girls couldn't help but exclaimed. Seeing that the long knife was about to pass through Yazi's chest in front of him, everyone around had no choice but to stare blankly at this extremely desperate scene. Swish! At this moment, a golden light suddenly flashed, and a tall figure appeared in front of Yazi. With his arms stretched out, he easily stretched out the Murata Baodao and pinched the handle of the sword. In front of him, he looked at Makoto Ito in front of him with cold eyes. What happened? Naruto couldn't help being surprised when he saw Makoto Ito on the opposite side. Huh, that's great. Naruto, you're finally here. Otherwise, senior sister Yazi, she'll. Saya breathed a sigh of relief. Nan Lixiang saw Naruto's sudden appearance, and after a slight stun, he immediately reported what happened to him. After listening to Nanrika's report, Naruto finally knew the reason for everything. While he was cultivating just now, he suddenly sensed that there was danger on Yako's side, so he used the technique of Hiraishin to quickly rush over. Fortunately, he had already set Hiraishin coordinates on everyone around him for insurance. Ito Makoto. Naruto took a step forward and stared at him with a frown. You didn't die, you seem to have gained strength. What do you think? Ha ha ha. After seeing Naruto's appearance, Makoto Ito suddenly burst into laughter. You finally came out. Uzumaki Naruto, I've been looking for you for a long time, aren't you amazing? I've got this body now. Strength is to trample you. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. I can't wait. Makoto Ito's face was full of excitement and madness, and the clothes on his body suddenly burst open with a few chirps. I saw that his originally thin upper body, actually in an instant, it seemed to be inflated, turned into solid muscles, and actually broke the clothes. Seeing Makoto Ito's sudden change, the girls couldn't help but take a step back, and the expressions on their faces were uncertain. Naruto, you have to be careful. The child standing behind Naruto reminded. Naruto turned his head and smiled slightly. Don't worry, senior sister Yazi, I will never forgive anyone who dares to hurt you. The child was slightly shocked. Looking at Naruto's back, she suddenly revealed a reassuring smile. Uzumaki Naruto, die, I want to take back everything I lost. He roared frantically, kicked his feet sharply, and rushed towards Naruto. Naruto's eyes flashed, and the next moment, a golden light flashed, and he suddenly appeared behind Makoto Ito. As for Makoto Ito, just 3 steps out, his body stopped in place, leaning forward, his face full of shock and inconceivable. "Ah!" he groaned suddenly, and a deep bloodstain appeared there from the left shoulder to the lower right abdomen. Puff! Blood spurted out suddenly, and Ito Makoto's body was suddenly divided into 2 halves. Spike. Hiraition, S/. Naruto used his limit speed to cut him into 2 pieces before the opponent could even react. Makoto Ito's body was divided into 2 halves, however, just as everyone was shocked and pleasantly surprised, the 2 halves were suddenly glued together again. After a while of squirming, the flesh at the wound actually recovered as before. Naruto couldn't help but be startled. What kind of ability is this? He clearly had a knife to cut him in half, yet he could still stick together again. It looks like Orochimaru's undead ability. Also, he seems to recover faster than Orochimaru. Ha ha ha, you can't kill me, I've become an undead existence. After Makoto Ito returned to his original state, he couldn't help laughing loudly again. Naruto curled his lips and said to the girls, "You all retreat, I have to use some special methods for this guy." When the girls heard the words, they hurriedly and obediently stepped back. Naruto turned around, put the treasured saber in his hand on the ground, and made a slight mark on his hands. At this time, Makoto Ito had already rushed towards him again. His body seemed to have turned into a black line, and no one except Naruto could see his trajectory clearly. Swish! The next moment, Makoto Ito suddenly appeared in front of Naruto. At this moment, a mysterious smile suddenly appeared on Naruto's face, and he reached out and pointed at Makoto Ito in front of him. Certainly. Body fixation. One of the advanced 3 body techniques. In just an instant, Makoto Ito was put in place. Ito Makoto found that he couldn't move, and struggled with the strength he thought was powerful, but he couldn't break free. At this moment, he was finally afraid. "What kind of sorcery are you using?" Makoto Ito yelled. Naruto smiled lightly, ignored him, and started to hand seal with his hands. In one breath, the printing is complete. Naruto stretched out his palm and pressed it against Makoto Ito's head suddenly. Sealing technique spiritual locking. In an instant, a mysterious rune poured into Makoto Ito's head from the palm of Naruto's palm, and Makoto Ito's body was shocked, and then he lost consciousness. Boom! The sound of the body falling to the ground sounded, and the girls came back to their senses. Solved, Commander, Nan Lixiang asked stunned. This scene was like a battle in the movie plot, which made people stunned for a while, especially the method of suddenly immobilizing people. This is simply a magical skill. Everyone around was shocked. Chapter 548 Research. Naruto clapped his hands and said lightly, "Okay, everyone, don't worry for the time being, he can't stand up anymore." Hit by his sealing technique, even a tailed beast would have to submit obediently, let alone such a person with a little bit of strength. Naruto has already seen that Makoto Ito's body seems to have undergone some kind of mutation. The strength of his body is extraordinary, but his spirit is still the same as before, and Naruto's seal technique is also the seal. The opponent's mental tricks are perfect for dealing with people like Makoto Ito. Of course, this trick is only useful to compare your weak talents, otherwise it will be backlashed. Crouching down, seeing that the bulging muscles on Ito Makoto were rapidly fading away, Naruto waved his hand and asked the surrounding soldiers to step forward. Take him to the research room. Several soldiers stepped forward, raising Makoto Ito's body with some trepidation, accepting Naruto's order and leaving. After arranging these things, Naruto smiled at the girls. Take it as a small episode. I will never let everyone have any trouble. If there is nothing, I will go to the scientific research room first. The girls nodded in agreement and watched Naruto leave. In the research room, Naruto brought the unconscious Ito Makoto to the virus experts, and after telling them about his situation, he said, "You must try to find out the reason for his mutation, and immediately after finding it, he said, "Notify me." "Yes, Lord Commander." Several experts bowed in agreement. The appearance of Makoto Ito made Naruto discover the first mutant human he saw since the infection of the dead body. How did he mutate? Naruto was also curious about this. If even these experts can't find the reason, he will have to investigate it himself. After instructing these things, Naruto hurriedly left the research room and handed over the task to the experts. Watching Naruto disappear at the entrance of the scientific research room, several experts couldn't help but glance at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. The next day, the expert team handed Naruto a research report with amazing efficiency. Naruto looked at it and was pleasantly surprised to find that they had made great progress. After reading it, Naruto couldn't help but ponder for a while. By extracting the cells and blood in Makoto Ito's body, the expert team discovered that it is actually rich in a special viral substance. The viruses that come out are similar, and these viruses can provide people with a powerful energy. It's just that, at present, they have not been able to find a way to decipher the virus in the bodies of the dead. The virus multiplies so fast, it is almost an instant thing, and once it is transmitted to the human body, it is almost impossible to solve. However, the virus extracted from Makoto Ito's body did not have any destructive effect on Makoto Ito's body, but instead strengthened his own strength and physique. Such a powerful virus can't help but make people envious. If humans are also blessed by this virus and have such strong mutations, wouldn't they no longer have to be afraid of those dead bodies? Naruto looked at the report and pondered slightly. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. He suddenly put down the report in his hand, and rushed out. "What's the matter?" Naruto's guard, who had been staying by his side, couldn't help but asked in surprise. "I have a bad premonition. I'll go to the research room first. Senior Sister Yazi, please notify Nan Lixiang and they will bring someone here," Naruto hurriedly said. Although Yazi didn't understand what happened, she nodded according to her words, and went to inform Nan Lixiang according to Naruto's instructions. At this time, Naruto appeared at the door of the research room after a few instants. In the research room, it is very quiet. He frowned slightly, and he was aware of the subtle sound coming from it. At this moment, his heart sank. Sure enough. These idiots. Greedy guy. Across the door, Naruto had already pulled out the steel dagger on his body. He opened the door cautiously. Sudden. A distorted and terrifying face suddenly appeared, accompanied by a bloody aura, and suddenly rushed towards Naruto. Call. Kiba appeared in the wide-open mouth, and bit down on Naruto's neck. Naruto was caught off guard and was unable to move. Boom. The next moment, with a soft sound, Naruto, who was bitten by the opponent, suddenly turned into a white smoke and dissipated in the air. Its shadow clone. After the white smoke dissipated, the ferocious face of the other party was revealed. Naruto's body appeared on the opposite side, staring silently at the other side. I saw that man was still wearing a white coat, his body seemed to be inflated with high bulging muscles, and that dark, twisted and sinister face. Naruto remembered that this guy was a member of the expert group before. Sure enough, have these guys mutated? And it's the kind of guy who hasn't mutated successfully. It seems to be closer to the existence of mutated dead bodies. After Naruto saw the report before, he had already realized a serious problem. The mutant virus in Ito Makoto can bring people extremely powerful power, even the kind of near-immortal regeneration ability. This ability Naruto has been described to several experts before, and when they were researching, once they really researched the results, would they really resist the temptation to become a strong man? Obviously, people who have had enough of the threat of death in this broken world have reached a crazy level of thirst for power. And Naruto is also well aware of people's desires. These experts will definitely use the results on themselves as soon as the research is successful. It's a pity that the risk is still very high. Seeing this guy who looks like a mutant dead body, he knows that they have failed. Why? With a slight sigh, Naruto threw the dagger in his hand at the dead body. The mutated dead body seemed to have vision, and its hearing became more dominant. After sensing Naruto's attack, it suddenly turned to one side and avoided Naruto's dagger, and the next moment it slammed towards Naruto. Rush! However, at this time Naruto's body had turned into a golden light and disappeared, and only appeared behind the dead body in an instant. Holding the dagger, a wind attribute chakra wrapped around the dagger, and the next in an instant, there was a soft sound, the dagger slid past, and the head of the dead body flew upwards. Chapter 549 Missing Expert. Spike. Although the strength and speed of this mutant dead body is strong enough, in front of the speed of Naruto Yellow Flash, it is only insignificant, and it doesn't take much effort at all. However, after beheading the mutant dead body, Naruto found that the headless body was still jumping several steps in place, as if he still wanted to attack Naruto. I didn't expect the vitality to be so tenacious. The next moment, Naruto instantly used Rasengan, blasting the headless body out, completely destroying the skeletal tissue in the dead body, which stopped the opponent's action. After doing all this, Naruto pondered for a while, and then checked the entire research room. What surprised him was that in this research room, except for this mutated dead body of the expert, the other four had disappeared. This is how the same thing. Naruto checked the inside and outside of the scientific research room again. Not only did the four experts disappear, but even Makoto Ito, who was originally sealed, disappeared. There are only some ordinary dead bodies locked in cages in the research room. And at this moment, the footsteps of the crowd finally came from outside. Nan Lixiang ran in panting slightly. She held a submachine gun in her hand and looked serious. When she saw that Naruto was the only one in the huge scientific research room, and there was a deformed body lying beside her, she couldn't help but turn pale. Master Commander, what's going on? Nan Lixiang asked in surprise. Naruto waved his hand. There is an accident, hurry up and investigate. Is there any record of anyone leaving the military region from yesterday to now? Yes. Nan Lixiang was puzzled for a while, but she still responded and asked her subordinates to check quickly. During this period, Naruto continued to carefully check here several times, and finally found a piece of scrap paper that was crumpled into a ball in a corner. After opening it and removing the incomprehensible calculation formulas above, Naruto saw the bottom line. Ito Makoto's virus plus normal human equals superhuman warrior or mutant dead warrior. Seeing this, Naruto understood a little, and sure enough, his guess was correct. The mutated dead body expert just now must have been transplanted with the virus in Makoto Ito. Moreover, according to the formula, these experts were originally delusional creation. Out of a superhuman warrior, he did this kind of experiment without his permission, but in the end he created a mutant dead body. Sure enough, people's desires have reached the point of desperation. Naruto sighed slightly. Commander, what's wrong? Nan Lixiang asked Naruto when he saw Naruto sighing. Naruto handed the draft paper to Nan Lixiang. Nan Lixiang looked at it, and after being stunned for a while, he seemed to understand something. This matter is a secret and cannot be spread. During this period, we must speed up the search for the four missing experts in Makoto Ito's body. Naruto ordered. Yes. Nan Lixiang realized the seriousness of the matter and nodded hastily. There are mutants among humans and the like. Regardless of how the mutant humans were created, the special virus in the body that can strengthen people is enough to drive people crazy. Therefore, before the matter is investigated clearly, even his subordinate soldiers cannot tell. At this time, the soldiers who went to check the exit records finally came back. When Naruto asked, he did not get any useful information. The entrances and exits of the military area are very normal, and every person who enters and exits must be checked, and the four missing experts have not found any clues in the records of the entrance and exit. With doubts, Naruto returned to the Commander-in-Chief's mansion. Where did the four experts go? Naruto had never found any trace of them in the research room before, nor did he find any signs of them dying or being eaten. The most likely one is that the four escaped from the scientific research room for some purpose and escaped from the military area. Naruto took a deep breath and slowly calmed down. He wanted to ask experts to find out the cause of the infection in the dead body, but he did not expect this plan to be interrupted from the beginning. He is not afraid of mutated dead bodies, mutated human beings, and the most troublesome thing is that now he has to find new experts to conduct research. Moreover, the success of this research is still unknown. It's easy to kill the dead body, but it's really hard to restore the dead body. Naruto felt a pressure for the first time. If he couldn't find out the reason in a short time, he had to give up the world and turn everything. Put your energy into your own cultivation, and once you reach the point of absolute strength, you can leave this world as well. Although it is not perfect that way, it is also impossible. Thinking about it, Naruto couldn't help but close his eyes and sat in the hall to enter the realm of meditation and cultivation. At this time, at the entrance of the hall, Yazi appeared and walked slowly towards Naruto. Seeing that Naruto was cultivating attentively, she did not disturb him, but walked gently in front of him, staring at his face quietly. Looking at his slightly wrinkled sword brows, Yazi's face was full of pity. For a long time, this man has been protecting everyone. He has incomparably powerful and mysterious strength, but who knows the hard work and pressure in his heart? Looking at him, there was a hint of tenderness on Yako's face, and she stretched out her hand, wanting to touch Naruto's face. At this time, Naruto opened his blue eyes and looked at the tender eyes of Yazi and the tender jade hand that stretched out. Senior Yazi, Naruto couldn't help but stunned for a moment. Just now, he fell into deep cultivation and didn't pay much attention to the outside world. Moreover, Yazi didn't have any dangerous aura, which caused him to. It was only when the child's hand reached out that he realized it. Yuhi's dizziness flashed on his face. He quickly pulled back his jade hand, and said softly, "Seeing your quiet appearance, I can't help but want to take a closer look at you." "Well, I'm sorry Naruto, did it bother you?" Naruto heard this, he couldn't help shaking his head and smiling. "I didn't expect you to be naughty, Sister Yazi." Yazi pursed his lips slightly, and suddenly said softly, "Naruto, don't let yourself get too tired. As long as we have you by our side, it's enough. This world doesn't need you to save alone. Sometimes you should also give yourself a proper rest. Don't be so tired all the time." Quote. Chapter 550 The Tenderness of the Child. Sister Yazi, thank you for your concern. I'm not as vulnerable as you think. Naruto's heart moved slightly, and a warm smile appeared on his face. "You bastard, I'm just comforting you. When a man is tired, he needs a woman to comfort him, really." Yazi smiled softly and smoothed the purple bangs on her forehead. "Sister Yazi, thank you anyway." Naruto nodded and held her jade hand. Yazi smiled slightly, let her hand be held, and said slowly, "It is already a very happy thing that everyone can live together. Naruto, you are our leader, you are for us. We have done enough, and we should do our best." Quote. After a pause, Yazi said again, "From tomorrow onwards, I and the other girls plan to follow Nan Lixiang for systematic military training, and then we can show more power in battle." Hearing this, Naruto couldn't help showing a smile. "That's not bad, but don't be too tired. Military training is very hard. We have survived such a dangerous world. In order to survive better in the future, we will definitely work hard." Yazi nodded, and suddenly said, "Naruto, may I ask you a request?" "Huh?" Yazi's face turned a little Yuhi, and suddenly she brought her soft lips to Naruto's mouth, and whispered softly, "Let me give you a kiss." Naruto couldn't help but froze for a moment, his heart moved suddenly, and just as he was about to say something, a soft and smooth feeling came from his lips. Yuko closed her beautiful eyes slightly and kissed Naruto's lips. Time seemed to freeze for a moment, and Naruto's hands didn't know where to put them. When he wanted to hug her, he suddenly left him. With a hint of Yuhi dizzy on her pretty face, she got up and chuckled, "None of us know when this broken world will come to an end, so I don't want to have any regrets. Naruto, you can understand me." In the mood. Naruto looked startled, and finally said, "Sister Yako, do you really like me?" Quote. What a straightforward man, Naruto, I have always liked you. Yako looked at Naruto with a serious face, and suddenly smiled again, but I guess I still queue up. Naruto was immediately embarrassed when he heard the words. Just when he was about to say something, Yuko turned around and left the hall. Before leaving, Yazi turned her head and said to him, Naruto, it's our luck to be by your side, so please think about yourself, we're all good. After speaking, her back disappeared at the door. Seeing her waist-length hair fluttering in the wind, Naruto couldn't help but be moved. Senior Sister Yazi, the cruel side of murder is really gentle enough to make people fascinated. Nice girl, Naruto. Dazed, the kind voice of Uzumaki Kina suddenly came from his mind. Naruto was stunned for a while, and his consciousness suddenly sank into the consciousness space. He saw Kina was standing there smiling softly, looking at himself with a look of relief. You're peeking at the outside world again. Naruto covered his forehead helplessly. Kina ignored his complaints and said with a smile, that girl is very good. You must grasp it. Quote. Naruto shook his head helplessly. Of course I know this kind of thing. Okay, I'm just happy for you. Really, you don't understand me at all. Seeing his expression, Kainai couldn't help but groan. Naruto waved his hand. Just now, he was really moved by Yako, but at this moment, when he thought that Kina was looking at him from beginning to end, he felt a little uncomfortable. However, after thinking about it, China was bored in her own mental space, and she was also very bored and lonely, so she couldn't be hard-hearted to blame her. After chatting with her for a while, Naruto left the consciousness space. In a blink of an eye, it was afternoon. Naruto was wandering around the military area. He saw the numb and helpless expressions on the faces of countless people. Most of them had already lost hope in this collapsed world, and most of them who survived have lost their loved ones or relatives. Without support, 10 are living in pain and suffering. Naruto couldn't help thinking of the moment when he lost his parents, and the world of Yanyi, who had no news of his parents. Although they usually don't show it on their faces, can they really calm down in their hearts? Thinking of this, Naruto couldn't help clenching his fists, and he wanted to change all this more urgently. Wasn't the words that Yuzi said just now to make himself less worried about them? But despite this, their hearts are still concerned. How can they let them go? Passing through a kind of numb survivor, Naruto suddenly jumped high and stood on the top of the city wall of the military district. Looking at the sunset in the distance, he took a deep breath. At this moment, in the distance in the air, there was a sudden sound of the roar of helicopters. Da da da. At the same time, bursts of machine guns rang out continuously from the helicopter. I saw 4 or 5 helicopters constantly flying in the air, making a fierce attack towards the ground below. Naruto couldn't help frowning. He noticed that under the helicopters, the group of dead bodies that were quietly wandering back and forth in the same place were all attracted by the sound of the helicopters, and took steps to chase them. What are these guys doing? At this time, the soldiers patrolling in the sentry tower on the edge of the city wall also noticed something strange. Through the binoculars, they observed that the helicopter was slowly flying towards the military area on their side. Those helicopters don't seem to belong to our military region. That number, is it from another military region? The patrolling soldier couldn't help but exclaimed. Not good. These idiots must be stopped. If this continues, those dead bodies will be led to the military area. Finally a soldier realized the problem. Hurry up and inform others. At this time, Naruto had already noticed the actions of these people, and he couldn't help but get angry. Did these guys deliberately use their dead bodies to bring disaster to themselves? What kind of bastard is doing this? Chapter 541 Dead Body Frenzy. I saw thousands of dead bodies, all attracted by the roar of the helicopters in the sky, and the firepower launched by those helicopters also aroused the chasing frenzy of the dead bodies. They are coming here. Go to the door and stop them. The soldiers on patrol were all panicked. At this time, Nam Lixiang appeared at the gate of the military district with a large group of soldiers. She stared at the flying helicopters in the air, her eyebrows furrowed tightly. At this moment, in the helicopter in midair, the pilot was showing a smug smile. The task assigned to him by his superiors is to lead all the dead bodies to the military area here. The purpose is to let the soldiers of the military area here fight with the dead bodies, and use the power here to destroy the dead bodies, and also use the power of the dead bodies to destroy them. Army here. And their ultimate goal is all the resources in the Naruto military area, including food, weapons, and everything else that can be used by them. These, in this apocalypse, are absolutely scarce resources. Naruto didn't know their purpose, but he knew that this group of people was definitely not a good person. Since he wanted to bring the dead body to him maliciously, no matter where these guys came from, it was definitely an existence to be wiped out. Thinking of this, he couldn't help showing a sneer at the corner of his mouth, and the hand seal with both hands suddenly completed the seal in an instant. He opened his mouth and snorted, "Futon wind style, the great wind blade." The next moment, the sky was turbulent, and the scenery changed in an instant. I saw the originally calm sky, and suddenly a violent whirlwind rose, and the whirlwind continued to expand. When it expanded to a diameter of hundreds of meters, a wind blade several meters long suddenly grew out of it. The whirlwind swirled and danced constantly in the air. This is a very difficult ninjutsu. If it wasn't for Naruto's knowledge of the wind attribute's nature transformation, he wouldn't use it. But at this time, as soon as this ninjutsu came out, the sky and the earth changed color. The pilots who were operating the helicopter in midair suddenly felt the cabin shaking unsteadily. "What's the matter? Is the wind blowing?" "That's not right. There was no sign of the wind when we set off. Moreover, in this weather, how could it be possible to suddenly say that the sky will change?" The pilots froze for a while. However, at the next moment, they were about to control the helicopter to retreat backwards. When they left this wind area, they suddenly heard a few harsh cracking sounds, followed by a whirlwind around. Naruto controlled the giant wind blade, and after involving the helicopters, he controlled the small wind blades to disintegrate the helicopter with a knife. Watching the whole helicopter was torn apart by the wind blade in a moment. It was broken into pieces, and Naruto snorted coldly. And those few pilots didn't know whether they fell or were torn apart by the wind blade, they couldn't survive anyway. However, after solving the helicopter, the real trouble has not been eliminated. He knows that the most important thing at the moment is how to force all these dead bodies back, or how to eliminate these thousands of dead bodies. Because the dead bodies have been activated by the helicopter, they are constantly approaching the military area, and those dead bodies that have already arrived at the entrance of the military area, after sensing the movement inside the military area, they are rushing into the military area. Although the military area is blocked by a high and thick city wall, the defense at the entrance is not so strong. Although the white iron gate is strong, it is still starting to loosen a little bit under the squeeze of countless dead bodies. The soldiers who originally thought that the military area was absolutely safe, could not help but fear when they saw this situation. How is it possible? These guys are actually going to rush to open such a thick door. Don't panic. We will gather our strength now and wait for the battle. Nam Lixiang showed a different calm at the moment. As a woman, she has the courage that most male officers do not have. Master Commander. At this moment, Naruto appeared at the gate of the military district after a few jumps and stood in front of everyone. Nam Lixiang couldn't help but look overjoyed when he saw him coming. Everyone has seen the power of Naruto. It is an existence that even machine guns and cannons cannot conquer. Although these dead bodies are ferocious, the power of Naruto is even more terrifying. However, looking at the group of dead bodies that were almost thousands of meters in succession outside the gate, everyone was not very optimistic. The number of these dead bodies is far more than tens of thousands. I am afraid it will cost hundreds of thousands of calculations. Tank convoy, all out. Missiles, ready to launch. Infantry battalion, defend your front line. Artillery battalion, Firepower output. Naruto already knew about the various battalions in his military area, so he quickly issued a combat order to everyone. He did not use defensive ninjutsu to stop this wave of attacks. On the contrary, he wanted to take advantage of this dead body frenzy to destroy them all. Expand the territory here. However, it is unrealistic to rely solely on one's own strength to eliminate such a large number of dead bodies, which must rely on the existing strength in the military area. As long as the vitality of the military district can reduce the number of all these dead bodies by half. He's got it. Destroy them all. Naruto clenched his fists, waved his hands, and returned to Nanrika. Lord Commander, what should I do? Nan Lixiang asked worriedly. Since the battle is over, we must have confidence. We must eliminate all these guys. Naruto glanced at her and said lightly. Everyone get ready, I'm going to open a huge entrance for these guys. Your firepower must keep up. Naruto ordered again. Yes, the soldiers were almost all in place at this time, and soldiers came one after another with weapons. Seeing that it was almost done, Naruto slightly hand-sealed his hands and slammed his palms to the ground. The art of Doden, Earth style. Rumble. A huge sound of vibration came out, and the high city wall built in front suddenly sank to the ground. The city wall with a full tens of meters was sinking. After a few seconds, a huge opening with a width of 50 or 60 meters appeared in front of everyone. Group. Chapter 542 Crazy Fire. Boom. When the dead bodies swarmed, it seemed that there was a gust of wind, and everyone took a step back in shock. Naruto shouted loudly, "Calm me all. Start attacking." His voice penetrated the air and entered everyone's ears, making everyone tremble. The next moment, everyone started to attack, and the anger was full. Machine guns, cannons, bombs. All the attacks hit the dead bodies in front of them, and the carpet bombing made those dead bodies in front of them bear the brunt, and they were smashed into pieces. Blood, accompanied by bursts of mourning and roaring, performed a doomsday finale in this military area. Naruto stood on the tallest building, overlooking the battle between the two sides below. The dead are not afraid, and there is the breath of the living in front of them, and they will keep moving forward. However, under the fierce firepower of the army, none of the dead were able to rush in. A row of machine guns had just finished firing the bullets, and their vitality had not weakened. The automatic rifles in the latter row, which were ready to be loaded, had already been pushed up, allowing the machine guns to add bullets. Once there are dense dead bodies rushing in under the dense rain of bullets, the artillerymen in the rear will ruthlessly fire cannonballs, blasting them all into rubbish. At the same time, several large tanks on the other side also raised their main guns high and fired one after another anti-aircraft guns towards the center of the dead body group. Boom boom boom. The ground seemed to be trembling, and there were sounds of explosions and roars everywhere. Looking at the battlefield under his feet, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his heart. After experiencing the battle of the Chunin world in the Hokage world, he could not help but feel excited when he experienced the killing sound of the battlefield again. The battlefield can always make a man arouse the blood in his heart. More than 10 minutes later, a large number of dead bodies had fallen in the military region, and the higher and higher corpses in front had gradually blocked the bullets of the machine guns. Seeing such a situation, Nanrika, who was fighting with everyone below, immediately announced that everyone would retreat a certain distance back so that the dead could come in again. Continue the bombing style, carpet-style firepower attack. The strength of the army should not be underestimated. After gathering the firepower of the entire military region, despite such a large number of dead bodies, it is impossible to rush in smoothly. At this time, the sky-shattering battle here has made the survivors in other parts of the military start to panic. Some timid people are already preparing to salute and prepare to escape. Of course, this is not their fault, which is necessary in order to survive. Yazi, Mommy, Yanyi and the others also heard the news, and they couldn't help but startled when they saw the wave of dead bodies in front of them. Naruto stood at a high place, and when he saw their arrival, he he hurriedly reprimanded them to leave here. Don't approach. Leave it to us here. Naruto, we can also help fight. Mommy took out her pistol and fired a few shots at the group of dead bodies in front of her. Naruto frowned slightly and said solemnly, you all step back. The girls couldn't help being shocked when they heard this, and then they noticed the serious expression on Naruto's face. Yazi's expression changed slightly and advised, everyone should listen to Naruto's words. Let's go to the back and stay behind. We are here, it is likely to affect his thoughts. It has to be said that Yako can understand Naruto's feelings very well, and Naruto also thought so at this time. If it was placed in the usual small tide of dead bodies, he would not mind the girls fighting with him, because in that case the crisis was it's relatively small, and it's still within his control, and this time, the overwhelming dead body, if there is a slight error, the end of his entire army will be wiped out. He doesn't want them to take this kind of risk. Therefore, this time Naruto rebuked the girls very resolutely and sternly. After listening to Yazi's words, the girls nodded slightly and left here with a worried mood. Only then did Naruto breathe a sigh of relief, and when he looked around, 1/5 of the dead bodies had been wiped out, but the steady stream of dead bodies behind them kept coming up. Judging from this situation, the corpses, the flesh and blood, of these dead bodies will dye the entire military region bloody. He frowned slightly, his body suddenly jumped down, and he was in the air. His hands had already started to hand seal. The moment he just landed, the seal was completed, and his palms slammed on the ground. Doden, Earth style. Boom. I saw the ground below the broken corpses, and suddenly there was a wave of fluctuations, and then, the corpses on the ground, as if they had fallen into the water, sank a little bit into the ground. In a few breaths, the piled-up corpses had all disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Except for the blood spattered on the ground, it seemed that the dead bodies had just started rushing in. After disposing of the corpse, Naruto jumped onto the building again, and stood there watching the fire bombardment of the crowd, while silently recovering the chakra that had just been consumed. Another 10 minutes passed. The first missile finally couldn't help but launch. From the launch pad at the rear of the military area, it flew high into the air, and then fell straight toward the ground below. It exploded suddenly behind the dead body group. Boom! The firelight, accompanied by the shaking of the earth, looked around, and saw that behind the dead body, a huge mushroom cloud rose high, and a violent heat wave swept over, and Naruto's eyes narrowed, only to see that all the dead bodies and buildings within a few hundred meters of each other were reduced to ashes. The power of missiles is definitely not to be underestimated. It's a pity that there are only 3 such missiles in the military region. The first one has been used by the former commander to deal with Naruto. This is the second one, and the third one must be kept. Times used. Naruto estimated that after this period of firepower and the power of the missile, this piece of dead body has almost been eliminated by 40%. 60% left. These 60% of the dead bodies have become more and more crazy under such firepower. They howled, Kiba danced his claws and rushed towards the crowd, as if tirelessly. And they don't know what they are doing at all. These dead bodies who have lost the ability to think of human beings will only do one thing, attacking human beings. As if it was a programmed computer, it repeated this order tirelessly. However, although these dead bodies are crazy, as long as the army works harder and eliminates some dead bodies, you can take action. Chapter 553 Wipe out all. With the passage of time, the number of dead bodies is getting smaller and smaller, and nearly half of them have died under the crazy sweep of the army. At this time, Naruto also felt that it was almost the same, and the army's ammunition had been consumed very seriously, and it was necessary to save some for future troubles. Standing on a high place, he suddenly ordered and shouted, "Everyone retreat first." Yes, at this time, everyone's order to Naruto was already unswervingly executed. After hearing this, they stopped the design and quickly retreated to the rear. Naruto nodded with satisfaction. He jumped down from a height again and stood in front of the crowd, watching the group of dead bodies in front of them who had no firepower to suppress them at an extremely fast speed. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, revealing a confident smile. "This number should be about the same," he murmured, facing the tide of dead bodies, his hands slowly forming a seal. The next moment, he suddenly pressed his hand to the ground. Rumble. In an instant, the ground shook, the ground cracked, and the entire military region seemed to be shaking. Everyone looked at Naruto in disbelief. Naruto shouted, "Don't panic. This is my trick." Hearing this, everyone calmed down a little. Immediately afterwards, everyone suddenly saw a huge opening in the ground ahead, and the dead bodies above rushed into it like a countercurrent tide, and were buried in the dark opening. Then, Naruto suddenly exerted his strength again, chakra pouring out of his whole body, and the giant hole once again broke through to the front, and directly extended a distance of thousands of meters. This is already the limit of Naruto ninjutsu. Naruto's forehead was slightly sweaty. At this time, the huge cracked mouth was thousands of meters long and nearly 100 meters wide. Extending directly from the military area to the outside, the depth is bottomless. Next, Naruto's other hand also slammed on the ground, and an invisible chakra wave spread from his palm, gushing out in all directions along the ground. Chakra, flooding into the ground desperately. With the injection of Naruto's whole body of chakra, the ground on both sides of the entire opening began to vibrate in a wavy pattern, and the dead bodies standing on both sides of the opening were all pushed by this wave-shaped earthquake. Involuntarily it poured into the huge ravine along the waves. The people standing behind Naruto were stunned when they saw such a spectacular scene. The commander's tricks actually caused the entire ground to move. This is a range of thousands of squares. Even the entire military region trembled under his single-handedness. His power, so terrifying. In the hearts of all people, an urge to worship can't help but rise, which is beyond their cognition range. It is estimated that only gods have this level of power. Although I have seen Naruto's powerful strength before, it is nothing compared to the strength shown now. Moreover, under Naruto's power, almost all the dead bodies on both sides fell into the gap he set up. The mourning sound came from the deep gully. After more than 10 minutes, the earth finally returned to calm. At this time, there were almost no dead bodies on the ground on both sides of the gully, and even the buildings above were all gone. It was razed to the ground by the tremor. Call. Naruto took a few breaths. Sure enough, this large-scale Doden, Earth-style technique still consumes too much chakra. Although there is a chakra increase in the body that is comparable to the power of nature, it is still caused by too little amount. He became exhausted. However, fortunately, this technique was completed, and all the remaining dead bodies were successfully included in the ravine. In this way, at least the dead bodies within a radius of several kilometers near the military region are almost wiped out. He stood up slowly, looking at the bottomless ravine in front of him, his hands clasped together again. The powerful chakra came out again, the earth shook with a rumble, and the huge gap closed quickly again. In a few breaths, the earth closed again. Back to normal, even the original crack never appeared. But everyone knows that there are countless dead bodies buried deep in the ground beneath their feet. Looking at the back of the man in front, everyone could not help but fall into a deep shock. Naruto lowered his hands and took a deep breath. The chakra in his body had almost bottomed out. This large-scale ninjutsu, just as he predicted, was still within his tolerance. This move directly destroyed all the remaining dead bodies. Worth it. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, seeing that the road in front of him was flat and that there were no more dead bodies. He finally turned around and looked at everyone. This wave of dead bodies has been wiped out. Next, the troops will set off to integrate all surrounding resources, destroy the remaining dead bodies one by one. Yes. Everyone suddenly came back to their senses, and they should be hurriedly respectful. At this time, Naruto is the real god in their eyes. Well, I'll go back and have a rest, the next thing is up to you to arrange. Naruto waved his hand and walked towards the commander's mansion. At this time, Nam Lixiong came over, suddenly stretched out his hand to support Naruto, and said with a slight smile, "Lord Commander, let me help you back." She could see the exhaustion on Naruto's face, and she also knew in her heart how serious the consumption of Naruto was after using such a large amount of energy to destroy the dead body. Naruto nodded, and was supported by her as he walked towards the Commander-in-Chief's mansion. The other officers rushed out of the military area with the soldiers excitedly, and began to search outside the military area. Because the dead bodies here are almost wiped out, the vast area around the military region is temporarily very safe. Even if there are a small number of dead bodies, they are all within the range that the soldiers can deal with. And what everyone has to do is to integrate all the available resources around and bring them back to the military area, or establish another branch in this temporary safe area outside, and expand the power of the general area again. As the troops went out to find resources, other survivors who heard the news in the military area also followed the soldiers boldly, looking for all useful substances together. And this dead body frenzy, with the joint efforts of the army and Naruto, did not sacrifice anyone, but instead had a broader space for development. Chapter 554 Help You Recover. When Naruto returned to the Commander-in-Chief's mansion, the girls immediately gathered around, and seeing Naruto's tired face, they couldn't help but worry. Naruto, what's wrong with you? Nan Lixiang shook his head slightly and said, the commander is overexhausted. You must have sensed the vibration of the ground just now, right? Yeah, we don't know the situation in the back, you tell us what happened. I heard that the dead were all wiped out, right? Shizuka stepped forward and pulled Nan Lixiang. Well, let the commander rest for a while, he looks exhausted. Nan Lixiang nodded and helped Naruto to sit down on the chair. Naruto couldn't help laughing bitterly. I'm just consuming a lot, it's not in the way. At this time, his chakra has recovered to about 10% along the way, and basically there is no major problem. Next, as long as you take a good rest and recover for a while, you will be full of fighting power again. Naruto, let's take you to have a rest. At this time, Mommy, Yan Yi, Sakai and Otome gathered around, grabbed Naruto's arm and pulled him into the room. Ah, I'll just rest by myself. Hey. As soon as Naruto opened his mouth, he found himself surrounded by 4 women and pushed him towards the room. The other girls all looked at them with ambiguous expressions. Mommy, Yan Yi, the relationship between them and Naruto is well known to everyone. However, they and Yuriko know the secret of Naruto's cultivation, and they will gain more power when they have sex with women. Therefore, when they saw that Naruto was weak, they decided to use their bodies to help him recover. But they didn't know that if it was just an ordinary chakra recovery, even if they didn't do love assistance, it would have no effect. After watching them put Naruto into the room, the rest of the girls were silent for a while with a slightly yuhi face. Nan Lixiang didn't know it. Seeing that they were a little different, he couldn't help but ask strangely, what's wrong with you? Ah, no, it's okay. Shizuka hurriedly returned to her senses and smiled. Oh, if that's the case, I'll deal with the business first, and I'll probably be busy for a while. Oh, by the way, with your training plan, I don't have time to help you for the time being. The soldiers will take you to practice. Nan Lixiang nodded and said, and she hurriedly left the commander's mansion. The girls looked at each other, and their eyes were full of doubts as they hadn't asked what happened. However, judging from the expression on Nan Rika's face, it seems that nothing went wrong in the previous battle, but it must have been a great victory. Thinking of this, they all sighed in relief. Naked in a moment. Naruto, are you running out of energy? Let me help you recover. Mommy first straddled Naruto and took off her clothes under the gaze of the other 3 girls. Naruto leaned on the head of the bed, his hands resting on his head, looking at the 4 girls sitting on the bed, all with beautiful expressions on their faces. He couldn't help exhaling comfortably, nodded and replied, then it's hard work for you guys. In fact, the chakra in his body does not need girls to do. Love to restore, doing. Love is just a way to increase chakra, but since they have misunderstood, Naruto has no kindness to point out. Anyway, he didn't think too much about Shangyan. Moreover, although he lacked chakra in his body after using ninjutsu before, his body did not appear to be very tired. Instead, a burst of heat was generated in his body under the stimulation of the girls. Looking at Mami's fiery figure, Naruto reacted all of a sudden, raised her head high between her legs. Mami's pretty face was slightly yuhi. She stretched out her hand to support the thing, and sat down with a sigh. A groan sounded, and Naruto also let out a long sigh. So cool. Under the service of the four women, Naruto enjoyed a burst of pleasure, and at the same time was surprised to find that the negative energy in their bodies was a little more than last time. Although these energies could not help him in cultivation at this time. Progress, but also greatly accelerated the speed of his chakra recovery. In this way, the negative energy in the girls' bodies can be recovered by themselves within a certain period of time, but the recovery speed is not very fast, and once it is broken, it will take a long time to recover to the previous level. However, this gave Naruto more hope. In this way, he didn't need a lot of virgins to cultivate himself. The existing girls could completely help him regain his strength. Moreover, he also hates the practice of using girls as a training tool, so he basically won't do things that just catch a virgin and come to practice. Naruto lay on his back comfortably, closed his eyes and silently recovered the chakra in his body, while enjoying the wonderful feeling of girls sitting on him and making love. He felt that he was in heaven. If you don't want to go back to the world of Hokage, if you don't want to find a safe and peaceful place, why not do it now? At this time, a figure quietly came to the door of the room, leaning his face on the door. After listening carefully for a while, he couldn't help but pouted and muttered dissatisfiedly, "Really, doing it with so many girls, smoking fuck you. Shay, what are you doing?" At this moment, Yuriko's voice suddenly sounded from behind her, and the mother who suddenly appeared startled her, exclaimed softly and hurriedly turned around to cover up. "Ah no, it's nothing. I'm just wandering around. Just wandering around." Yuriko looked at her daughter, Yuhi's sophistry, and couldn't help but smile slightly. She walked to the door of Naruto's room and listened for a while. Yuhi's dizziness also flashed on her face, and she shook her head helplessly as she saw her daughter. "Silly child. If you want to go, just come in. Sooner or later you will have to dress up Naruto with them." That's so embarrassing. I don't want it. Damn Naruto." Saya raised Yuhi's face and couldn't help but groaned. "I'm not used to sleeping with other people. Even if I sleep, I only sleep with you, my mother. Go to sleep." Chapter 555 Shay joins. "Sooner or later, I will leave my mother. Naruto is a very good man. Of course you have to be with him." Yuriko smiled slightly. "No, I want my mother to be with me forever. If my mother is no longer around, how can I be at ease with Naruto?" Saya said stubbornly. "Hey, what a silly boy." Yuriko was moved. She didn't expect Saya, who was used to being arrogant, to have such a sensible side, which was really unexpected. Seeing her mother's expression, Shay suddenly smiled and said, "Mom, you can stay with us too. Can't we live together in the future?" "Hey, but, I'm afraid it will affect you." Yuriko sighed. In fact, she didn't think so deep in her heart. With Saya and Naruto, she had to suffer all day long. That kind of torment is unbearable. Every time I hear that shameful voice, why haven't I ever felt a heartbeat in my heart? She is also a normal woman. However, she couldn't say these words. She could only hide them deep in her heart. Looking at her daughter looking forward to it, Yuriko could only smile bitterly. "Shay, go in, my daughter is no worse than others." Yuriko gently pushed her and said. But they are doing it now. Can't I go in right now?" Saya exclaimed. "That would disturb everyone, and it would be very rude to break in suddenly without Naruto's permission." "Don't worry about this kind of thing. Saya, let's go." Yuriko knocked on the door quickly and quickly left the place in a flash. "Ah Mom, you are so cunning." Saya stood in the same place and was at a loss, looking at Yuriko who was leaving quickly. Yuhi's face couldn't help but swell. The next moment, the door of the room was gently opened, Otome Yuhi opened a crack in the door with a slight Yuhi face, looked at Shay and said in a low voice, "Shay, what's the matter with you?" "Ah, me, I'm fine." Shay panicked, and glanced inside secretly, suddenly seeing that Yan Yi was riding on Naruto and exercising. His heart surged with jealousy. He pouted and said, "I want to participate too." Hearing this, Otome couldn't help being stunned. The next moment, she finally reacted. She gave Saya a strange look, and giggled, "I am really careless, you actually saw it. Since that's the case, come on too. We're all tired." "My god, the four of you are already squeezing Naruto, why are you still tired?" Saya was pulled into the room by Otome, and the lewd scene in front of her made her unable to look directly. Hearing Otome's words, and seeing that the four girls were all lying weakly on the side panting and moaning, Yuhi couldn't help but look big. This guy Naruto is actually so powerful. Come on, we are all so tired, you just come to help Naruto regain his strength." At this moment, Otome took advantage of Saya not paying attention, and suddenly went around behind her, and a pair of jade hands caught it all at once. The two mountains of meat on her chest, by the way, bumped her body towards Naruto from behind. Shay couldn't help but let out a soft cry, and the two peas on the chest were directly caught by Otome. Suddenly, her delicate body couldn't help softening, and she shouted angrily, "Otome, how can you do this? Hurry up, let go. It's like this. How strange. Hey, that's not good. I don't think you are taking the initiative at all. If you want to join us, you must pass our review." He pulled off her clothes, and suddenly two huge white rabbits popped out. "Mommy, Yan Yi," and the world couldn't help exclaiming in unison. "It's so big. Saya, you're so big that we're all jealous," they cried. At this time, Naruto also opened his eyes and was a little surprised when he saw that Saya came over. But immediately he laughed. This was just right. Now that his chakras have all recovered to perfection, there is still a lot of negative energy left in Saya, so let's practice for a while. Soon, Shay was dragged onto the bed by several women. At this time, there were already 6 people sitting on the big bed. Naruto was a little worried that the bed would be unbearable, so he made a small seal and used Mokuden, wood style, to reinforce the whole bed a little, and then he lay there at ease, letting Saya be pushed and pressed against the bed. "On yourself." Feeling the huge mountain of meat on Saya's chest, Naruto felt very wonderful in his heart. In front of Saya's cup, Yan Yi's and Mammy's are not worth mentioning. He couldn't help reaching out his hands to hold it. I picked up the huge pair and squeezed it lightly. At this time, Saya was pushed onto Naruto's body by them, and he was played with Naruto's hands under their eyes. Suddenly, he felt a sudden discomfort. Yuhi's tender face was ashamed, and his whole body trembled slightly. "Stand up. It's really embarrassing." She couldn't help but regret coming in. Of Naruto on her chest, Saya's body couldn't help but get excited again, but there was also a faint stimulation in her heart. This kind of stimulation made her body even more strange. A lot of water flowed out for no reason. At this time, Naruto, who had already sensed Saya's reaction, smiled, and immediately plunged deep into her body. Shay couldn't help but tilt her head back, and the full pleasure of being deeply penetrated made her look up and groan. It turns out that Saya is also very lewd. Seeing Saya's reaction, Otome couldn't help laughing. I'm not. It's all of you. You are so good and bad." Shay was teased like this, and was so ashamed that she really wanted to have a hole for her to dig into, but at this time her body was already. Naruto twitched back and forth quickly. Moved. Under the eyes of the other 4 girls, the unparalleled pleasure of being brought out by Naruto made Saya almost go crazy. Her delicate body trembled, and she wanted to bite Kiba without screaming, but she couldn't do it anyway. At this moment, her body seemed to be no longer her own, fully enjoying the happy feeling in this strange atmosphere. At this time, Naruto closed his eyes and began to practice silently. The negative energy flowing from Saya continued to generate a new force in his body. Naruto's chakra was slowly growing and progressing. Suddenly, a coquettish voice suddenly sounded in my mind. Naruto. You are going too far. Chapter 556 Seal. Naruto was stunned for a moment. This voice was very familiar. Who was it if it wasn't Kina? Hey, I told you not to peek at random. Naruto closed his eyes, and his consciousness appeared in the space. Yeah, you put on my clothes first. You bastard. Kina's pretty face was big, Yuhi, and her hands hurriedly covered her eyes. It turned out that Naruto was naked because he was still having sex with girls, but at this time he appeared in the space again, still maintaining the original state, that is to say, his form in the consciousness space. It was also naked, which frightened China. I am sorry. Naruto realized that it was not good, and snapped his fingers hastily, and a suit of pants appeared on his body. You are really going too far. After calming down, Kunai glared at Naruto and said, It's not that I disagree with you doing that kind of thing with girls, but you are with so many girls all at once. The child has done it, and it has done it for so long. Do you want to die? Quote. You didn't peep for so long, did you? Naruto couldn't help but be startled when he heard the words. Hey, that's not the point of the problem. Listen carefully to me. I think you must be addicted to women. It's not okay to do this. Kunai said bitterly. If this continues, your body will be damaged. Sooner or later you will be drained. The celebrity was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed. So you are worried about this? No problem. My body is strong. It's not a problem at this level. Nonsense. In short, you can't mess around anymore. Otherwise, your body will really be overwhelmed. Chennai said angrily. Naruto was a little speechless about her stubbornness. He was really not afraid of being squeezed dry, but the girls couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't she know about this? I said, let's not worry about this issue. Let's talk about you first. How long have you been peeping here? Naruto didn't want to talk to this cheap mother about such sensitive issues. It always felt strange, yes. Although the soul mind is not the real mother and child, the body is actually related by blood. So, he decisively changed the subject. What do you mean by peeping? I can watch it. Can't I even watch my son's affairs? Asshole, do you think I'm a mother? Chennai became angry. That Yuhi-colored hair faintly flew up. Naruto sweated a bit, waved his hands helplessly and said, Anyway, you'd better not peek at my personal privacy. Besides, my health is fine, so there is no need to worry about this issue. However, I would like to thank you for your concern. He reached out and made a seal, and the world in front of Kina suddenly changed. Naruto disappeared in front of her, and she could no longer contact the outside world. Consciousness returned to reality. Naruto opened his eyes slightly, and couldn't help letting out a long breath. Fortunately, he was decisive enough to not entangle with her, and directly used strength to temporarily forcibly seal her chakra in the body, not letting she is running around, although she is suspected of bullying her like this, but there is no way to do it. Women are very stubborn, not to mention Uzumaki Kina, who was once known as the Blood Yuhi Pepper. In order to reduce trouble, she is doing. It is better to seal her chakra during love. Why? Just focus on what's in front of you now. Naruto looked at Saya, who was swaying up and down on his body, feeling the joy that her body brought to him, and the traces of chakra in his body. He couldn't help laughing comfortably. 2 hours later, including Saya, all the 5 girls were lying on the bed, moaning and moaning weakly. Naruto also ejaculated 3 times with satisfaction. At this time, he lay there while resting while cultivating the chakra in his body. Really, it's really amazing, Naruto. Saya leaned against one of his arms, panting, and, you are still so energetic now. It seems that it takes several women to tire you out. Hee, Naruto is a god. Of course the gods will be very powerful. Mommy laughed. God. Saya looked at Naruto's profile, and couldn't help but wonder. A little bit of time passed, and finally, the sky was completely dark, and everyone realized that they hadn't had dinner yet. At this moment, Teacher Shizuka's voice came from outside the door. Naruto, it's time to eat. Is your strength almost recovered? She knocked on the door and asked. All the girls got up weakly and hurriedly put on their clothes. Naruto also got up and replied, I am almost recovering, I'll be here soon. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful in his heart. I am afraid it will be more intense. Must try it next time. After going out of the room, the girls in the hall were already gathered at the dining table and ready to eat. Seeing Naruto coming out with the 5 girls, he couldn't help showing an ambiguous smile. How's your recovery? Teacher Shizuka stepped forward and hugged his arm and asked with concern. I don't think he is regaining his strength, right? Miyamoto Rei suddenly said sourly. She didn't know that Naruto could use that method to cultivate strength, but when she saw that the 5 girls were all dizzy with yuhi on their faces, and their eyes were full of spring, she immediately guessed something. Hirako pulled her daughter's arm and apologized to Naruto. Sorry Naruto, Rei is a little rude. Naruto laughed awkwardly. Speaking of which, everyone is quite familiar with each other. Looking at the shy yuhi face of the 5 girls, they should know something even if they don't need to think about it, and they probably heard some of the voices from their own room just now. Thinking of it this way, even with Naruto's old face, he couldn't help but feel a little unbearable. And Saya and the others who followed Naruto lowered their heads and dared not look at everyone. Saya even had Yuhi's face on his neck. No one could see that something was wrong. Yuriko shook her head helplessly. Her daughter was still too tender. However, seeing her daughter's face full of unfinished spring, she couldn't help but feel a little relieved. After all, her daughter has taken this step. In this way, she should be able to get along better with other girls. But why do you feel so lonely? Thinking of the depths, she couldn't help but sigh slightly. Chapter 557 Conspiracy. After dinner, everyone went back to their rooms to rest, and even the 5 girls who had just finished with Naruto didn't go to Naruto's room. In the middle of the night, Naruto was practicing in the room. Because of the previous practice, the chakra in his body increased a little, and the original chakra in the body became more loose. He couldn't help being a little excited. If the original incomparably huge chakra was all liberated, coupled with this new power, the result would definitely be stronger than before. Perhaps, crossing the plane is no longer a luxury. Tokyo Military District. All the elites, scientists, sergeants, and leaders of the country are gathered here. At this time, they were all in a huge basement, witnessing one of the greatest miracles in the world. Success. Finally succeeded. With a loud bang, a gray-haired scientist shouted frantically. At the same time, a young adult man suddenly appeared behind him. The adult man is surrounded by 4 middle-aged men. If Naruto is here, he will be surprised, because those 4 middle-aged men are the same virus experts who were originally in the Naruto military area. And that young adult man was just an ordinary soldier. However, at this time, this ordinary soldier, with one hand, forcefully demolished an iron gate in front of him. That banging sound came from him. The power is so great that it is like a Superman. Sure enough, it seems that our previous research is not meaningless. The 4 virus experts also laughed happily. At this time, among the crowd, a man with a dignified face stood up, and he said indifferently, the virus has been completely perfected. The failed virus we studied before accidentally spread to the whole world. I didn't expect this virus. I have completed the evolution myself, which saves us all the trouble of researching. Moreover, almost all people in the world have become dead bodies, and there are only a few armies and a few survivors left. It seems that this is invisible. It helped us conquer the world. Ha ha ha, we have to celebrate tonight. Long live the president. After the majestic man finished speaking, the rest of the people all praised. This mutated virus has finally been perfected, and you guys have contributed greatly. At the banquet, the president looked at the 4 virus experts who had returned from the Naruto military region, and said with a gratified smile. It's right to serve the president, but this time we went to the military district of Bedlard City and found a mysterious figure. That guy will surely become an obstacle to your conquering the world. An expert said. HMPH, as long as my army of super fighters is trained, what if he is powerful? In front of thousands of super fighters, he can only surrender to my destiny. The president smiled lightly. The president is wise. In this way, the whole world is under the rule of the president. Someone else began to applaud. Okay, in order to praise the achievements of the four of you, I will give each of you a mutated virus potion. The president suddenly smiled. What? The four experts were stunned for a moment, and then they all cried out loudly, No. Your Excellency the President, you can't do this. You can't do this to us. Pull it down, 1 potion per person. The president ignored their pleas for mercy, and said indifferently. A few soldiers beside him immediately stepped forward, grabbed a few newly researched potions, and injected them into 4 people. Body of. The 4 experts shuddered violently, and then, their bodies began to tremble at a terrifying frequency, and their muscles were constantly being strengthened. However, in the process of this trembling, the will of the 4 people disappeared little by little. When the trembling stopped, the 4 of them had become puppet-like existences. This is a puppet that only obeys the president. This is a program that is incorporated where research is conducted. Hey, it seems that this kind of medicine can really be popularized. The president's eyes turned on everyone, and everyone around couldn't help shaking, and then smiled reluctantly. Don't worry, you are my most loyal subordinates. After training a large number of super soldiers, I still need you to help me command them. The president smiled slightly. However, everyone has no bottom in their hearts, but no one can resist. Because the most initial source of the virus came from the president. And he himself is the only one and the most primitive virus variant. The road to conquer the world. It's about to begin. Early the next morning. In the military region where Naruto is located, after a night of rest and adjustment, Naruto has improved in strength. Although the chakra in his body has not been completely unblocked, he has made a lot of progress from that step. If he can, he really wants to make chakra move, but the premise must be to absorb enough negative energy. Now he is thinking about whether he should take the initiative to attack and take Lee, Yazi, and Momo one by one. While thinking about it, he walked out of the corridor, when Yuriko, who had just woken up, was walking towards him. Morning, Naruto, Yuriko greeted him. Morning, Aunt Yuriko, Naruto responded with a smile. Suddenly he saw that Yuriko was only wearing a thin long dress, and the stalwart on her chest seemed to be about to come out. Yuriko smiled softly. Naruto, under your leadership, this military region has become better and better. I didn't expect you to have such good leadership skills. Naruto smiled indifferently. He used to be the 6th generation of Hokage in the Hokage world. Although he did not have the great achievements of the 1st generation, he at least had the ability to manage a large village, not to mention that it is only a mere military area now. Moreover, among them, the contributions of Nan Lixiang and other officers cannot be buried. Go on like this, Naruto, you can even rely on this military region to form a piece of paradise for human beings, and you may be able to build a small country at that time. Yuriko suggested. In this way, you will become the first in this apocalypse. A human who has re-established a new order. Such a great achievement should be admired by all human beings. Chapter 558 Spooky Attack. For Yuriko's proposal, Naruto just smiled. Although it is not difficult to rebuild a country with his strength, his original purpose is not this. Therefore, no matter how beautiful Yuriko describes, Naruto will not be moved. The only thing he cares about now is whether the girls here will follow him once he has the strength to return to the time and space of Hokage. Looking at Yuriko in front of him, Naruto smiled faintly. At this moment, Nan Lixiang suddenly rushed in anxiously. Master Commander, in some cases, our soldiers have suffered a large number of casualties in the south of the military area. According to observation, there seems to be something unusual there. Now someone has been sent to investigate. Something unusual. Naruto was slightly taken aback. Take me to see it. Yes, Nan Lixiang responded hurriedly. Naruto smiled at Yuriko. Then I'll take a look first. You and the others better stay here and don't leave. This commander's mansion has already been set up by Naruto with an invisible barrier. Once there is a threat, he can immediately sense it. Well, Naruto, go, be careful, Yuriko said softly. To the south of the military area, a large area of the site had been emptied by Naruto's art, and there were very few dead bodies. Before that, the soldiers of the military area were collecting the remaining resources here, but at this moment, on the ground, all lay their bodies. Moreover, the tragic state of the corpses simply unsightly. Some were torn in half directly from the thigh, some were directly hollowed out in the heart, and some were directly twisted off the neck, torn from the waist, and the intestines flowed all over the place. Bloody, scary, weird, that's the atmosphere of the scene. When Naruto and Nan Lixiang arrived here, after seeing such a scene, Naruto couldn't help but fell into contemplation. As the #1 powerhouse in the Hokage world, it can be seen at a glance that these people were all killed by one move, and they were all torn apart by a force. Now, who has the strength to do these things? Besides himself, he can only think of one person, that is Makoto Ito, who had mutated before, and Koichi Wisteria, who mutated earlier. However, Koichi Ito has been killed by himself, and Makoto Ito's spirit has also been sealed by himself. People will not be resurrected, and the power of the seal cannot be cracked, unless the technology in this world has reached the point where it can compete with its own ninjutsu, or there are people in this world who have the same ability as themselves. These possibilities made Naruto fall into deep thinking. Commander, we have to be careful, it is very likely that the murderer is still nearby. Nan Lixiang said vigilantly. To be honest, seeing these tragic scenes, she was also frightened. If Naruto wasn't by her side, she would definitely be beating drums in her heart. Naruto suddenly said, the murderer is no longer nearby, let's investigate first. Nan Lixiang was stunned for a moment, and turned to see Naruto's determined expression, so he nodded, called a few soldiers, and began to explore the scene. Just now, Naruto had used his senses to release it, and he sensed the surroundings, but he didn't find any signs of living beings. However, there was no mistake, he still reached out and patted Nan Rika lightly, setting a Hiraishin mark. An hour passed, and everyone found some clues. Nan Lixiang returned to Naruto, frowned slightly and thought, Lord Commander, we have found some special places, come and have a look. Naruto nodded, followed her to a corpse with a hollowed-out heart. Nan Rika said, I think the murderer is definitely not a dead body, or a variant of a dead body. If so, the brain of this corpse is he was not mortally wounded and should have turned into a dead body, but in fact he didn't, which means that there was no dead body virus on the other side. Yeah, Naruto nodded slightly, which he had thought of when he first saw the corpse here. After a pause, Nan Rika said again, also, look, the shape of this wound should have been pierced directly by the palm of a human being. I think it is very likely that a human with such power is the missing Ito. Sincerely done. Naruto frowned. What Nan Rika said is very reasonable, but Naruto would rather believe that the seal on Makoto Ito has not been unlocked, and he is not willing to believe that there are more mysterious guys in this world who can unlock the seal set by him. Of course, this is also a possibility. If there is such a powerful person in this world, then his own strength is not necessarily invincible. It seems that his own strength must be restored to the strongest level as soon as possible. He was lost in thought. After a while, when Nan Lixiang and others checked the neighborhood several times, until there was nothing suspicious to find out, he came back to his senses. Let's go back first. During this time, no one is allowed to leave the military area. Naruto ordered. Yes, Lord Commander. Nan Lixiang nodded. Everyone hurriedly closed the team. Although the soldiers were not very afraid because Naruto was there, they still did not want to stay in such a threatening and strange place. They were afraid that they would also end up like these companions. After returning to the military region, Naruto stood at the gate of the military region, stood still, took a deep breath, stretched out his hand and slowly formed a few seals, and a perception barrier large enough to cover the entire military region opened. Although the layer barrier consumes a lot of his strength, in this way, once an unknown enemy breaks into the military area, he can sense it. This can be regarded as a police measure. Back at the Commander-in-Chief's mansion, Naruto found that all the girls were in the hall, anxiously waiting for him. "Naruto, what's going on over there? Did you find anything?" Yuriko greeted her and asked anxiously. Naruto shook his head. "At present, I haven't found any special clues, but I think that guy will appear again. In the past few days, I have put all the military areas under martial law, and are not allowed to step out of the military area. This world is getting more and more dangerous." The girls couldn't help frowning when they heard this, showing a worried look. Naruto couldn't help but smiled and comforted. "Don't worry, all of you will stay in the commander's mansion during this time, and don't go anywhere. In short, with me, I will definitely protect you." Chapter 559 Yuriko's Raid. "Sir President, super soldiers have been dispatched to various places, and now we have mastered the information on the current situation in most areas. We can go to recover all places." In the presidential palace of the capital, in the hall with the brilliant lamp wall, a subordinate officer respectfully reported to the majestic man sitting in the top position. "They done a good job. Now, the major military regions in the country are probably already in their own hands. My title of president is ignored. Let's start cleaning them up from home first." The majestic man put his chin in one hand and said lightly, "By the way, has the alienated virus liquid already entered mass production?" "Yes, my lord, now the sergeants in the capital have basically all been transformed into super soldiers, ready to be dispatched by your lord at any time." "Well, very good. It seems that my road to conquer the world is about to start." The majestic man stood up, waved his hand, and laughed. "You're wise man, when the whole world is under your control, you will be the overlord of the world." "Ha ha ha." The majestic man raised his head and laughed. Suddenly, he lowered his head and frowned and asked, "How's the situation in the military district of Bedlard City? I heard that there are very powerful guys there. I'm not afraid of people from other military districts, but I brought it out from those 4 experts. Judging from the information, it seems that the leader over there has some skills." "Don't worry, Mr. President, a super soldier has been dispatched there, and he can be assassinated in a few days. No matter how strong a human being, he will only be slaughtered under the super soldier." The officer laughed. "Well, don't be careless." The majestic man nodded. The night finally came, the so-called assassination. Naruto did not know. At this time, he was secretly cultivating chakra in the room, but his mind sank into the body, untied the original seal, and let Chennai come out. Now he is accepting Chennai's anger. "You're going too far. You treat me like this. Do you know how unfair it is to me?" Chennai yelled at Naruto with a look of anger. Naruto, on the other hand, looked indifferent, with no oil or salt. This Chennai was so angry that he really wanted to have the urge to rush over and beat him, but unfortunately, Chennai didn't have the strength. Moreover, although she was very angry, she was still a little reluctant to hit him in her heart. After a while, Naruto came out of the consciousness space and couldn't help but let out a big breath. Women are really scary. The most important thing is that Chennai's identity makes him feel very embarrassed, and he really can't touch her. So he had no choice but to let her say a few more words. But fortunately, in Naruto's view, Kina is just too boring and lonely, and occasional minor conflicts can be regarded as a kind of adjustment. Thinking of this, Naruto smiled and ignored her. Turning to think about what happened in the morning, those bizarre murderers, no matter from which aspect, are done by a group of guys whose strength is far superior to human beings. According to previous observations, the most suspect is Makoto Ito, who suddenly disappeared. If he really appears again, Naruto will never let him go this time. Naruto, who was thinking about things, didn't feel sleepy even though it was a big night. He got up and walked out of the room, walked to the corridor, looked up at the faint moonlight, and suddenly had a vague and ominous premonition in his heart. Really, there are more and more complicated things. Strength is strength. Should we do that? Naruto sighed slightly. Currently, the fastest way to improve strength is to find virgins to absorb negative energy. But, invading their bodies with a purpose is really awkward. Giggle. Naruto, it looks like you have troubles too. Suddenly, there was a slight smile from the side, and Naruto couldn't help but turn his head, only to see Yuriko in a one-piece dress walking towards him, her chest opened very low, revealing a large piece of snow-white skin, in the moonlight. It seems to exude a Kiba-like light under the illumination. Aunt Yuriko, it's so late, why don't you go to bed? Naruto couldn't help asking. I can't sleep either. Yuriko chuckled, came behind Naruto, and quietly approached him and said, I heard your words just now. Naruto turned his head and glanced at her, rubbing his nose embarrassedly. I'm so sorry that you heard me, I shouldn't be shaken at this time. Naruto, you are also working very hard. Yuriko suddenly stretched out her jade hand and gently put it on his shoulder, rubbed it for him, smiled and said, I know the secret about your cultivation. If you need it, if so, I can help you too. As she spoke, a warm and ambiguous breath reached Naruto's ears, causing Naruto to tremble slightly. Aunt Yuriko. Naruto couldn't help jumping, and said embarrassingly, I will handle this kind of thing myself. It's really passive. If I hadn't sent Saya to your room that night, I guess you wouldn't have noticed Saya's thoughts, right? Yuriko laughed softly, and I can see it. The girls who are with you all like you. Naruto was stunned. Really, you should understand all of this, and now I have to say it. Yuriko suddenly came around in front of him, and her hands suddenly changed from rubbing her shoulders to hooking his neck. They were all stuck to Naruto's chest, raised his head, stared at him seriously and said, in this critical period, you don't need to care so much about these little things. That's right, but, Aunt Yuriko, you are too close. Is it possible that you are still testing me? Naruto swallowed slightly, feeling Yuriko's the pair of tender jade hands are drawing circles on the back of his neck, and the crisp itching feeling makes him feel like he is about to tremble. Giggle. Naruto, I can feel your heart beating faster. Yuriko approached again, exhaled at Naruto and said slowly. The ambiguous breath, and Yuriko's charming eyes with a smile, suddenly made Naruto feel unable to control himself. Aunt Yuriko. Shish, don't talk. Naruto, I know that you need the strength of cultivation right now, so I will help you to cultivate well tonight. This matter can only be a secret for the two of us. Chapter 560 Yuriko's Dedication. Hey, this. Naruto shook violently, and just as he was about to push her away, he suddenly saw the long dress slipping down on her body. Jade-like skin, under the moonlight, exudes a thrilling charm. Naruto looked down, and the nosebleed almost spurted out. I didn't expect that there was a vacuum inside the lily. The long dress slid directly from her upper body to her waist, and the stalwart double peaks on her chest were tightly pressed against Naruto's chest. Naruto, please don't refuse, this is my intention, I hope you can take it. Everything is to help you cultivate. Yuriko's mature and charming face could not help but raise two faint Yuhi halo, a pink Yuhi's long hair draped over his shoulders, like a cherry tree blooming quietly in the moonlight, with a dreamlike magic, it deeply attracted Naruto's eyes. Aunt Yuriko, you know, what are you doing? Naruto swallowed hard, and he couldn't help but struggle in his heart, she is Saya's mother. That is his mother-in-law, how can I accept her body? How could this be? Well. However, the slight sway that appeared in Naruto's eyes was completely suppressed by Yuriko's next move. I saw her hands cling to Naruto's shoulders, gently tiptoe, and soft lips imprinted on his lips. Naruto suddenly opened his eyes wide, his eyes full of incredible colors. At this time, Yuriko's jade face was flushed with Yuhi, and she boldly stretched out her fragrant tongue as she forcibly kissed Naruto. Like a small snake, it got into Naruto's mouth, stirring constantly with her sweet body fluid. Naruto couldn't hold it anymore. Yuriko's mature charm fully bloomed at this moment. Although she was Saya's mother, her chest did not sag at all. When she squeezed into Naruto's chest, he could clearly feel it. The amazing elasticity contained in it. Yuriko took the initiative to kiss for a long time, and finally slowly left Naruto's lips, and a long crystal silk thread was drawn from the corner of her lips. Giggle. It's beautiful to be young. Yuriko giggled, looking at Naruto's handsome face. Her eyes couldn't help flashing a hint of infatuation. Aunt Yuriko, it's not good to do this, Naruto said with some rapid breathing. Although he said so, there was a faint impulse and excitement in his heart. It seems that a mature and charming woman like Yuriko is really irresistible to men. It's okay, Naruto, I'm just helping you practice. After tonight, I'm still your Aunt Yuriko. Yuriko reached out and stroked Naruto's face, leaning even tighter. Her other hand quietly stretched out under Naruto. It's really wrong. It's already hardened like this. Naruto snorted, and Yuriko stretched out his hand to hold it, and the soft jade hand held it, which made his whole body tremble. Naruto, you should take the initiative anyway, okay? Don't have any psychological burdens, this is just a practice. Yuriko pressed her lips together, biting Naruto's ear and whispering. The temperature between the two gradually rose. Yuriko's maturity was not something that Naruto could resist. Naruto thought it was inappropriate, but under the double attack of her words and actions, she finally gave up her resistance. Aunt Yuriko, this is a practice, Naruto suddenly said softly. Yuriko's body shook slightly, and then a smile appeared on her face. Yes. So please use me to practice as much as you like also, can you call me Yuriko? Naruto hesitated for a moment, then opened his mouth and called her, Yuriko. Naruto, please, come in. Yuriko spread her snow-white legs and slammed her hands around Naruto's neck, wrapping her whole body around his waist. And at Yuriko's invitation, Naruto's object that was too hard to bear finally shoved slightly and entered her body deeply. So tight, just like a virgin. Naruto was slightly surprised. Seeing the expression on Naruto's face, Yuriko's face suddenly became more yuhi, and she whispered softly, I've long time not done it. Yuriko. Naruto supported her round and smooth buttocks with both hands, brought her body to the wall of the corridor, pressed lightly against the wall, and began to advance wave after wave. Good. It's amazing. At this moment, Yuriko broke through the taboos in her heart, and the incomparable stimulation brought by her body made her feel even more exciting in her heart. Having sex with her daughter's man, this is simply unimaginable, but she is really doing it with Naruto at this time, and the real pleasure is not the scene when she imagined her daughter doing it with Naruto at night, and brought it to herself with her fingers. Comfort can be compared. At this moment, she was so comfortable that she was about to shout. Naruto, okay, it's so comfortable, then, hurry up. Yuriko couldn't help but shouted softly. I didn't expect her to be so slutty. Naruto was startled, and hurriedly covered her Yuhirin's small mouth. Aunt Yuriko, don't be so loud. I got it. Call me, please call me Yuriko. Yuriko said softly with her misty eyes full of water stains. Naruto nodded, and his body moved faster. At the same time, there was also a surge of negative energy from Yuriko's body. Although this energy was not much, he found that it was not as small as he imagined. The psychological stimulation of having sex with Yuriko has far exceeded the growth of chakra. Really, I'm so happy for Saya. Yes, there is a strong man like you, Naruto. She should have died happily. Oh, I really I want to always be like this. Yuriko clasped Naruto's neck with both hands, facing Naruto's wave after wave of shocks. Zhao's body trembled violently, and her mouth began to babble nonsense. But at this moment, on the other side of the corridor, a woman was standing there dumbfounded, covering her mouth in surprise. Why, how could this be? Yuriko would do such a thing with Naruto. Her heart was full of shock.